A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would request everybody to please take their seats and put their mobile phones on silent mode. We are to begin shortly. Meanwhile, the schedule for today's event is as shown on the screen. The Chief of Army Staff will arrive at 10:15. Thank you. Aishwarya. Good morning, everyone. Once again, a gentle reminder to the audience to kindly put your mobile phones on silent and please take your seats. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to each one of you to the curtain raiser of the third edition of the Chanakya Defense Dialogue. We are delighted to have you here with us this morning as we set the stage for a day that promises insight, inspiration, and innovation in equal measure. We have an exciting lineup curated especially for this occasion. A sequence of thought-provoking sessions, powerful exchanges, and ideas that push the boundaries of what is possible. The highlight of the day, the real icing on the cake, will be a fireside chat with the Chief of Army Staff, General Upendra Dwivedi. His vision, experience, and forward-looking perspectives will undoubtedly set the tone for the transformational journey that is the Chanakya Defense Dialogue. The moderator of this fireside chat is none other than Ms. Shweta Singh, Senior Managing Editor of Aaj Tak, and one of the most popular names in Indian journalism. With a distinguished career spanning more than 27 years in the industry, she is widely recognized for her incisive analysis, rigorous questioning, and nuanced grasp of national and strategic issues. We are also honored to host our very special guest, Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, former Minister of State, Government of India, who will be delivering a special address. We look forward Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have with us today General Upendra Dwivedi, Param Vishishta Seva Medal, Ati Vishishta Seva Medal, Chief of the Army Staff. General Upendra Dwivedi, Chief of the Army Staff, distinguished veterans, officers from the three services, Friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. It is my privilege to welcome you to the curtain raiser of the Indian Army's flagship international event, the third edition of the Chanakya Defense Dialogue, which has been jointly curated by the Strategic Planning Directorate and the Center for Land Warfare Studies. Over the past 2 years, the Chanakya Defense Dialogue has established itself as one of India's most credible and intellectually stimulating forums on strategic affairs. This platform brings together military leaders, strategic thinkers, academia, industry, policymakers, scientists, researchers, and the youth, all under one umbrella, for generating ideas from which inputs are synthesized and shared with policymakers. When we embarked on the journey of the Chanakya Defense Dialogue in 2023, our inaugural theme, Securing India and the Indo-Pacific region, collaborating for comprehensive security, was aligned with our Honorable Prime Minister's vision of a Viksit Bharat by 2047. Building on that foundation, the second edition in 2024 advanced the national vision with the theme, Drivers in Nation Building, Fueling Growth Through Comprehensive Security, reinforcing the principle that security and development must progress hand in hand. This year, we take another leap forward, synergizing Indian Army's efforts towards transformation through progressive reforms, underpinned by national security, technology, and self-reliance. Hence, this year's theme is Reform to Transform, Sashakt, Surakshit, or Viksit Bharat, which is aligned with the Indian Army's vision of the decade of transformation, as given by our Chief, General Upendra Dwivedi. As we have progressed over the last 3 years, we have enhanced the scale and scope of our engagement by reaching out to a larger populace. For the first time ever, a unique initiative was hosted under the banner of this Chanakya Defense Dialogue called the Young Leaders Forum, Empowering Youth for India's National Security, which was deliberately held on 31st of October to align it with Rashtriya Ekta Divas, the 150th birth anniversary of the Iron Man of India, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. The idea behind hosting this forum stems from a fundamental understanding that the security of a nation today demands not only a whole-of-nation approach, but also a whole-of-public approach. This event was attended by a large number of university students, young researchers, NCC cadets, and school students from Army Public Schools and Kendriya Vidyalayas. It was also streamed live to all major Cat A establishments and formation headquarters of the Indian Army, universities having defense wings, academic establishments with memorandums of understanding, regional technology nodes, IITs through the Indian Army cells, and paramilitary forces training centers, and was attended by over 9,000 participants from all over the country. This edition of the Chanakya Defense Dialogue endeavors to capture the spirit of a nation that is on the rise, where security and development are not separate goals, but shared missions. National security, apart from being the responsibility of the armed forces, is also a shared responsibility, wherein every citizen has a stake and a role to play. Keeping this in mind, today's proceedings are once again being streamed live all across the country. With this background of the Chanakya Defense Dialogue, may I now invite Director General of the Center for Land Warfare Studies, Lieutenant General Dushyant Singh, Param Vishishta Seva Medal, Ati Vishishta Seva Medal, to kindly deliver the welcome address.
A very good morning to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. We pride ourselves in keeping ourselves on time, and this time things are moving as per time. So without taking any more time in preliminaries, Let me begin my welcome address. Chief of the Army Staff, General Upendra Dwivedi ji. Vice Chief of Army Staff, General P.P. Singh. Senior military officers, distinguished speakers, senior military and government officials, esteemed veterans, academia, members of the think tanks, students of universities and colleges, and above all, friends from the media. A very warm welcome to all of you. It's my privilege and honor to welcome you all to this curtain raiser of annual landmark seminar of Indian Army, co-partnered by Center for Land Warfare Studies, Reform to Transform, Shashakt, Surakshit, or Viksit Bharat. This gathering marks the second event of this year's CDD 2025, an enhanced event from the last two editions, with powerful conversations, visionary ideas, and transformative insights that will shape the future of India's defense and national security. The first event, the Youth Leaders Forum, was held on 31st October, as Akashika mentioned to all of you. I will not repeat those highlights, but I would like to just tell you the impact of this particular event was so much that our adversary was rattled and took out almost 3 to 4 deepfake videos on the 31st October event. So they are following us very closely. This I have mentioned in the past also on various occasions of whatever the Indian Army and the Center for Land Warfare Studies is actually throwing out into the media is coming out in a big way, maybe not favorable to us, but then it also tells you the kind of impact which we are getting as far as the adversary on the other side is concerned. Of course, all of you are aware that the event was graced by Shri Kiran Rijiju ji and Member of Parliament Tejasvi Surya, and youth icon. Coming on to today's curtain raiser, to the CDD 2025, we have enhanced the scale of the curtain raiser as it brings together thought leaders, policy makers, technocrats, and defense professionals to explore the pathways to a stronger, safer, and more developed India by 2047. We begin today's event with a fireside chat that promises to be both candid and compelling between the Chief of the Army Staff and renowned journalist Sweta Singh, delving into the overarching theme of the main seminar. Very warm welcome to you, Sweta. This will be followed by a special address by Sri Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji, former Minister of State for Electronics, IT, Skill Development, and Jal Shakti, a right personality to actually throw some light on our defense preparedness. He'll be joining us later on at around 11:30. We then move on to the panel discussion on the theme of Atmanirbharta, defense, steered by General Rahul Singh, the Deputy Chief of the Army Staff, Capability Development, the right person to do so, with the panel comprising of Dr. Chandrika Kaushik, Mr. Ashish Rajvanshi, and Professor Manan Suri. Together, they will explore the synergies between innovation, industry, and institutional reform in defense. Before I conclude, allow me to share the brief highlights of the CDD 2025 scheduled on 27th and 28th November. The CDD 2025 will be graced by none other than the President of India and the Raksha Mantri, who will be addressing the conclave. We are proud to announce that the event will witness deliberations by 9 foreign speakers from 8 countries. Besides, it will also feature a number of well-known national voices. Time constraints may have limited the numbers, but not the depth or the diversity of perspective that is going to be on show as far as this event is concerned. The national speakers include former ambassadors, military veterans, industrialists, heads of PSU. We are also fortunate that the CDD 2025 would also be graced and addressed by the Chief of Defense Staff, Chief of Army Staff, CEO of Niti Aayog, Defense Secretary, Mr. K. Vijay Raghavan, former PSA, Principal Scientific Advisor, Mr. Pankaj Saran, former Deputy NSA. So you have a whole lot of things on your plate, so do come in and join as far as the CDD 2025 is concerned. This year's dialogue is built on 3 pillars. Of course, we have 5 pillars, but I have reduced it to 3 pillars. Reform, that is the institutional, doctrinal, technological shifts to meet the emerging challenges. Empowerment, harnessing youth, which we have already done one event on this particular aspect. Innovation, and civil-military fusion. Security, a whole-of-nation approach, and I dare say that the whole-of-nation approach is no more a cliche. I think it is a serious business, and we need to focus on it in the right way, and I hope this particular discourse is going to throw us some very interesting outcomes. And a whole lot of Indian Army formations are also actually delving on military-civil fusion, and I'm sure by the end of this year we will have something which will be worth incorporating into our planning. So before I conclude, I would like to request the Chief of the Army Staff to kindly inaugurate the audio-visual trailer of Chanakya Defense Dialogue 2025. Jai Hind.
In a world of shifting power and evolving threats, Bharat leads with clarity, confidence, and conviction. The Indian Armed Forces move forward, transforming through progressive reforms, building a Sashakt, Surakshit और विकसित भारत. Drawing inspiration from India's civilizational wisdom, previous editions of the Chanakya Defense Dialogue have charted pathways for strategic foresight, cooperation and resilience. Today, we are crafting a roadmap for a future-ready India. Policy frameworks for leadership, integrating AI, robotics and autonomous systems. The Indian Army is reshaping the art of modern warfare, powered by India's own satellites watching over every frontier. Reforming the defense ecosystem, fostering indigenous innovation and fueling India's rise as a global manufacturing hub. India's youth carry the promise of tomorrow, and the Indian Army leads this charge, empowering the youth to become catalysts of strength, guardians of progress, and champions of national pride. India is ready, driving integration, fostering innovation, and accelerating modernization. For a force ready for multi-domain operations and a nation ready for the future. As Bharat rises to meet the challenges of a new age, the third edition of the Chanakya Defense Dialogue emerges as a beacon of reform, resilience, and renewal for a self-reliant, secure, and transformative tomorrow.
Thank you, sir. We now move to one of the most awaited segments of the day. The curtain raiser today sets the tone of the Chanakya Defense Dialogue through a fireside chat with our Chief, General Upendra Dwivedi, where he will share his vision and his thoughts on the modernization and transformation of the Indian Army, a target that he has set to meet the security challenges as they unfold in current times. Moderating this special conversation is one of India's most respected and popular names in journalism, and a voice we have all grown up listening to, Ms. Shweta Singh, Senior Managing Editor of Aaj Tak. Ma'am, I request you to kindly join us on stage. With over 27 years in the media industry, Ms. Shweta Singh is known for her insightful analysis, sharp questioning, and deep understanding of national and strategic affairs. She leads India's foremost news channel and also heads Good News Today. It is my privilege to also have with us here today General Upendra Dwivedi, Chief of the Army Staff. He is a leader who is deeply respected not only for his strategic vision and professional excellence, but for the warmth, approachability, and genuine connection he shares not only with service personnel but with the youth as well. All his endeavors have been directed towards inspiring and empowering the officers and soldiers of the army as well as the youth of the country, thereby investing into the future of Bharat. It is therefore a matter of immense pride to welcome him here with us today. Sir, I request you to please join us on stage now. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a huge round of applause. We look forward to this discussion. With this, over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
सर सबसे पहले तो क्योंकि तीसरा संस्करण है जो कर्टन रेजर है उसका पहला सेशन यहाँ पर हम जो विकसित भारत की बात करते हैं और भारत एट 2047 की बात करते हैं उससे इसका सामंजस्य तालमेल किस तरीके से बैठ रहा है?
तो इसके पहले तो श्वेता मैं आपको ये बताना चाहूँगा कि इस बार का जो हमारा कर्टन रेज थोड़ा हटके है क्योंकि हिंदी में बात कर रहे हैं तो शायद कुछ लोगों को आश्चर्य हो रहा होगा बट मेरे ख्याल से ये एक तरीका है कि हम ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा लोगों तक पहुंच सकें। तो ये 2023 में जब ईयर ऑफ ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन जब मनोज पांडे ने शुरू किया था तो हमें ये लगा कि जब हम इतना रूपांतरण कर रहे हैं, इतना बदलाव ला रहे हैं तो कैसे हम इसमें जो हमारे बाकी साथी जिसको हम डाइम बोलते हैं, जिसमें डिप्लोमेटिक, इंफॉर्मेशन, इकोनॉमिक भी शामिल है, हमें कैसे सहयोग कर सकते हैं, हम उनके साथ कैसे सहयोग कर सकते हैं। सो 2023 में हमने शुरू किया था स्थायी शांति और सुरक्षा में सबका आपसी सहयोग कैसे हो सकता है। जब 2024 में आए तो हमने कहा कि हम इसमें भारतीय सेना देश निर्माण में कैसे क्या अपनी अहम भूमिका निभा सकती है। सो जब 2025 में आए तो हमने कई चीज़ें देखी। सबसे पहले मैं आपको ये बताना चाहूँगा कि रक्षा मंत्री जी ने ईयर ऑफ रिफॉर्म अनाउंस किया था, सुधारों का वर्ष, और तब तक हमने डिकेड ऑफ ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन या रूपांतरण का दशक अनाउंस कर दिया था। तो इसीलिए मैंने कहा इन दोनों को मिला के हम रिफॉर्म को ट्रांसफॉर्म बना देते हैं। तो इसका मतलब ये है कि दोनों का एक मेलजोल बैठ जाएगा। तो हमने जब बात की, आप देखिए जैसे कि हमने सुरक्षा की बात की, सशक्त की बात की, ये तो एक सेना का काम है, लेकिन जहाँ तक विकसित भारत है वो हम सबका काम है। तो जो इस बार हमारा सोच विचार है कि कैसे हम और सुरक्षा और सशक्त के ऊपर बातचीत कर सकते हैं और विकसित भारत का जो सफ़र है हम सब साथ मिलकर कैसे आगे बढ़ा सकते हैं। तो इसी के ऊपर हम लोगों का सोच विचार होगा इस बार।
ये साल ऑपरेशन सिंदूर का साल था। ये साल एक ऐसा साल था जिसमें हमारे देशवासियों ने बहुत सारी ऐसी चीज़ें देखी जो शायद उनकी कल्पना से परे था। ऑप सिंदूर को लेकर रक्षा मंत्री की तरफ से, सीडीएस की तरफ से बार बार कहा गया कि अभी ख़त्म नहीं हुआ, और आपको भी अगर मैं कोट करना चाहूँ तो आपने कहा कि ऑप सिंदूर ख़त्म नहीं हुआ है, बस अभी गोलाबारी रुकी है। जब तक हमारे उद्देश्य पूरे नहीं होते कार्रवाई जारी रहेगी। अगर पाकिस्तान को भूगोल में अपनी जगह बनाए रखनी है तो उसे राज्य प्रायोजित आतंकवाद बंद करना होगा। भारतीय सेना अगले चरण ऑप सिंदूर 2.0 की तैयारी में है। तो न्यू नॉर्मल जो सर कहा गया ऑप सिंदूर को, क्या पाकिस्तान, एक तरीके से अगर हम देखें तो क्या पाकिस्तान के लिए ये न्यू नॉर्मल एक बड़ी चेतावनी है?
मेरे ख्याल से ये तो एक बड़ी चेतावनी बन के रहेगी, क्योंकि जब आप स्टेट स्पॉन्सर्ड टेररिज्म या राज्य प्रायोजित आतंकवाद को बढ़ावा देते हैं तो ये हमारे लिए, भारत के लिए बहुत चिंता का विषय बन जाता है। क्योंकि देखिए हम तो एक उन्नति की बात करते हैं, हम सबको साथ में लेके चलने की बात करते हैं। तो जो भी हमारे काम में रोड़ा अटकाएगा उसके लिए हमें कुछ ना कुछ कार्रवाई करनी पड़ेगी। अब जहाँ तक न्यू नॉर्मल का सवाल है, आप देखिए हमने तो यही बोला है कि पानी और खून एक साथ नहीं बह सकता। ब्लड एंड वाटर कांट फ्लो टुगेदर, टॉक्स एंड टेरर कांट बी टुगेदर। यानी बातचीत, संवाद और आतंकवाद एक साथ नहीं चल सकता है। तो हम तो सिर्फ यही बोल रहे हैं कि आप शांति की प्रक्रिया अपनाइए, हम भी उसका साथ देंगे। जब तक ये नहीं होगा तब जो आतंकवादी हैं या उनके आका हैं वो हमारे लिए समान मान है। दूसरी चीज़ ये है, जो भी आतंकवादी को बढ़ावा देगा हम उसको जवाब देंगे, और हमारे पास अगर बैरंग चिट्ठी भी आई तो भी हमें पता है कि जवाब किसको देना है, हमें उसकी चिंता नहीं है। और जहाँ तीसरी बात है कि जहाँ तक आप ब्लैकमेल करना चाहते हैं हमें किसी चीज़ के लिए, मेरे ख्याल से भारत अभी इतना संपन्न है कि हम किसी ब्लैकमेल से डरने वाले नहीं हैं।
तो आपका असेसमेंट क्या है इसके, जो जो रिजल्ट्स रहे उसका आकलन क्या है ऑप सिंदूर 1.0 अगर मैं कहूँ?
1.0 तो देखिए, मैं तो ये कहना चाहूँगा कि मूवी शुरू भी नहीं हुई थी, सिर्फ एक ट्रेलर दिखाया गया था और ट्रेलर के बाद 88 घंटे में वो ट्रेलर ख़त्म हो गया था। तो आगे आने वाले हालात कैसे होंगे, ये इसके बारे में हम पूरी तैयारी करके बैठे हुए हैं। और अगर कोई ऐसा हमें मौका देता है पाकिस्तान, तो हम उसको भरपूर एक शिक्षा प्रदान करना चाहेंगे उसको कि कैसे एक जिम्मेवार नेशन को अपने पड़ोसियों से बिहेव करना चाहिए।
तो अगर हम एक ऑनगोइंग ऑपरेशन की बात करते हैं तो इंडियन आर्मी उन चैलेंजेस के लिए हमेशा तैयार है।
देखिए, जब कोई भी ऑपरेशन होता है उससे कुछ ना कुछ हम शिक्षा ग्रहण कर सकते हैं। तो इस ऑपरेशन में भी हमने कुछ शिक्षा ग्रहण की। जैसे सबसे पहले तो हमने ये लेसन प्राप्त किया कि इसमें सबसे पहले चीज़ ये है कि जो डिसीजन मेकिंग है या जो आपने निर्णय लेना है उसके लिए समय बहुत कम है, और निर्णय आपको हर लेवल पे लेना पड़ेगा। क्या आप यहाँ पे निर्णय लें और फिर नीचे पास करें? नहीं हो सकता। तो हर लेवल पे, हर स्तर पे लोगों को समय के हिसाब से तैयारी करनी पड़ेगी और एक्शन लेने पड़ेंगे, कार्रवाई करनी पड़ेगी। दूसरी चीज़ जो इंटीग्रेशन बोलते हैं, इंटीग्रेशन का ये मतलब है कि चाहे आर्मी, नेवी, एयरफोर्स, सीएपीएफ, साइबर, स्पेस, कोई भी हो, उसका इंटीग्रेशन हम जितना जल्दी करेंगे उतना हम इस लड़ाई को बड़े साझे ढंग से लड़ सकेंगे। क्योंकि आज की लड़ाई जो है वो मल्टी डोमेन है। अगर मैं बोलूं सिर्फ आर्मी अकेले लड़ सकती, नहीं लड़ सकती, हम सबको मिलकर लड़ना पड़ेगा। जो सैटेलाइट है वो बताएगी कि कौन कहाँ पर बैठा हुआ है, और जो उसी प्रकार से जो हमारे साइबर हैं उसका ये है कि क्या मुझे एक, मान लीजिए एक ड्रोन आ रहा है, तो ड्रोन के लिए क्या मुझे फायर करने की ज़रूरत है या मैं उसको इलेक्ट्रोमैग्नेटिक स्पेक्ट्रम या कहीं लेज़र से किल कर सकता हूँ? तो बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं जो इतनी आपस में घुल मिल गई हैं कि हमें उसमें साथ में बैठ के सोच विचार करना पड़ेगा। तीसरी चीज़ ये है कि लड़ाई कितने दिन चलेगी ये आज हम नहीं बता सकते हैं। हमने तो लड़ाई तकरीबन मान लीजिए 88 घंटे में की, कल कोई 4 महीने भी चल सकती, 4 साल चल सकती है। इस चीज़ को मद्देनजर रखते हुए क्या हमारे पास साजो सामान है उस लड़ाई को लड़ने के लिए? क्या उसके लिए शस्त्र हैं? अगर नहीं है तो उसकी हमें तैयारी करनी पड़ेगी। हमें यह देखना पड़ेगा कि हमें 4 साल की लड़ाई तक के लिए भी तैयारी करके रखनी पड़ेगी।
सर, आपने बेरंग लिफाफे की बात की, मेरे जहन में सीधा आया कि जो अभी दिल्ली ने जो धमाका देखा, हालांकि अभी इन्वेस्टिगेशंस उसकी चल रही हैं, लेकिन रेड फोर्ट के सामने एक ब्लास्ट हुआ और इससे ये भी समझ में आता है कि डेटरेंट एक तरफ रहता है, लेकिन जो देश के दुश्मन हैं वो भी अपने हिसाब से आगे बढ़ने की कोशिश करते हैं कि अच्छा ये डिटेक्ट हो जाता है, हम इस हिसाब से करेंगे। तो नंबर 1, हम कैसे वो डेटरेंट हासिल कर रहे हैं? और जम्मू कश्मीर को भी अगर हम स्पेसिफिकली देख लें तो क्या वो आपको वहाँ से हम एक ऐसे सिनारियो की बात कर सकते हैं जो आतंक मुक्त की तरफ बढ़ा रहा हो हमें?
तो सबसे पहले तो आपने डेटरेंट की बात की। डेटरेंट जो हम बोलते हैं सैन्य शक्ति, और जो हमारा राजनीतिक इरादा है, राजनीतिक निर्णय लेने की जो काबिलियत है। क्योंकि डिटरेंस तब काम करता है जब आप उस पर विश्वास कर सकें कि हाँ ये कुछ करेंगे अगर हमने कुछ कार्रवाई गलती की तो। दूसरी चीज़ ये है कि क्या सामने वाला उस पर विश्वास करता है, तो हाँ आज जो हमारा डिटरेंस है हम कह सकते हैं कि हम ये करेंगे, दूसरा वाला विश्वास करता है कि ये कर देंगे। तीसरी चीज़ ये है क्या उसके पीछे आपकी सैन्य शक्ति है। हाँ, आज की तारीख पे हमारे पास वो सैन्य शक्ति है जो दिन ब दिन बढ़ती जा रही है। तो ये 3 चीज़ें हैं जो डिटरेंस के लिए काम करती हैं, और मैं कहना चाहूँगा आज की तारीख पे डिटरेंस काम कर रहा है। जहाँ तक हम जम्मू कश्मीर की बात करें तो जम्मू कश्मीर के हालात कैसे हैं? जम्मू कश्मीर के हालात देखिए, 5 दिसंबर 2019 से आज जो है बहुत ज़्यादा बदलाव आया है। जब 5/2/2019 में आप देखिए, जब हमारा संविधान का अनुच्छेद 35 अल्फा जब हम लोगों ने निरस्त किया था, उससे लेके आप कुछ पूछना चाह रहे थे पहले? मैं
नहीं,
अच्छा,
आप
तो उसमें सबसे बड़ी बात ये थी कि सबसे बड़ा बदलाव ये आया कि एक मोहतरमा थी, मुझे याद है उस वक्त मेरे पास आई थी जब मैं नदन आर्मी कमांडर था, तो उन्होंने बताया था कि उसके पहले क्या होता था, जब स्कूल के प्रिंसिपल बोलते थे कि बच्चे कल स्वतंत्रता दिवस है तो देश के झंडे का चित्र बना के लेके आना, तो वो घर जाके पूछते थे मम्मी कौन से देश का चित्र बनाना है झंडे का। लेकिन 5 अगस्त 2019 से सबसे बड़ी बात ये हो गई कि हमें पता है कि भारत के झंडे का ही चित्र बना के लाना है। तो जो पॉलिटिकल क्लैरिटी हमको बोलते हैं वो एक बहुत बड़ी आ गई। उसके कारण क्या फ़ायदा हुआ आप देखिए, तकरीबन 25 से 26 हज़ार करोड़ का तो इन्वेस्टमेंट ऑलरेडी जो वहाँ पे हो चुका है। जो कॉलेजेस हैं, आईआईटी, आईआईएम, एनआईएफटी, एम्स, सब कुछ खुलने, कॉलेजेस बहुत खुल गए हैं। 21% तो स्कूल्स का खुलने का इजाफा हो गया है। इस बार बताया गया है कि 24,000 तकरीबन जो स्टूडेंट हैं वो हमारे इसमें अपना एनआईएफटी में, ये अपना एनईएफटी में पास हुए हैं। तो ये तो है, मैं जहाँ बात कर रहा हूँ, जहाँ तक हमारे उन्नति की बात है, डेवलपमेंट की। जहाँ तक आप जायज़ा लें कि आतंकवाद का क्या है, आतंकवाद भी बहुत ज़्यादा गिरावट आई है। यहाँ तक कि अभी इस बार तकरीबन में 31 मिलिटेंट मारे हैं, टेररिस्ट मारे हैं, जिसमें कि तकरीबन 61% जो पाकिस्तान टेररिस्ट हैं। रिक्रूटमेंट इस बार सिर्फ एक हुआ था और वो भी पकड़ा गया।
सिर्फ एक
रिक्रूटमेंट है तो वो भी पकड़ा गया था। तो कहने का ये मतलब है, देखिए, पत्थरबाजी नहीं होती है, नारेबाजी नहीं होती है, बंद नहीं होते हैं, सब चीज़ें रुक गई हैं। अभी देखिए जो आपकी उधमपुर, श्रीनगर, बारामूला जो 272 किलोमीटर वाली ट्रेन है, वो कितनी अच्छे से यूज़ हो रही, इस्तेमाल हो रही है। इस बार तो जब हमारी रोड बंद थी तो जो एप्पल भी थे, जो सेब भी वहीं से लाए गए। तो ऊपर नीचे का जो हमारा मूवमेंट है वो है। अमरनाथ यात्रा देख लीजिए, पहलगाम हुआ, लोगों को लगा पता नहीं अमरनाथ यात्रा में इस बार लोग आएंगे कि नहीं, बट पिछले 4 साल का जो हमारा औसत है वो तकरीबन 4.3 लाख था, और इस बार हमारा 4.13 लाख सैलानी आए सिर्फ अमरनाथ यात्रा के लिए। तो कहने का ये मतलब है कि सारे मापदंड आप देखें तो जम्मू कश्मीर में बदलाव आ रहा है, अच्छे के लिए आ रहा है। जो उसका एक यूथ है, जो जवान है, वो जो उसे चाहिए एक आशा और विश्वास की जो एक जागरूकता है वो बढ़ती जा रही है, और भारत के प्रति जो एक सम्मोह है वो बढ़ता जा रहा है, पाकिस्तान की तरह उसका मोह भंग होता जा रहा है।
रेड फोर्ट जैसे अटेम्प्ट्स को हम एक डेस्परेट अटेम्प्ट कह सकते हैं वहाँ के यंगस्टर्स को बरगलाने के लिए भी, लेकिन यूथ मोटे तौर पर आपको लग रहा है जम्मू कश्मीर का अब भारत के साथ है, क्योंकि आर्मी ने बहुत एफर्ट्स किए हैं पहले से आवाम को जोड़ने के लिए। जो गुडविल स्कूल्स से जो शुरुआत होती है,
जी।
आप अभी आश्वस्त और सैटिस्फाइड हैं, संतुष्ट हैं जितना रिश्तों को लेकर प्रोग्रेस हुआ है वहां पर?
सबसे बड़ी बात तो ये है कि आज का आम नागरिक जम्मू कश्मीर का भारत के हर कोने कोने में जाना चाहता है, वहाँ पे व्यवसाय करना चाहता है, और वहाँ के लोग, बाहर के लोग अभी जम्मू कश्मीर में आना चाहते हैं। उससे बड़ी बात यह है कि जम्मू कश्मीर के लोग जो वहाँ के हालात देख के परेशान होकर बाहर निकल गए थे, वो भी कश्मीर में वापस आना चाहते हैं और अपना उत्तरदायित्व संभालना चाहते हैं कि वो जम्मू कश्मीर के लोगों के लिए क्या करना चाहते हैं। मेरे लिए सबसे बड़ी बात यह है। और जहाँ तक आर्मी गुडविल स्कूल की आपने बात की है, उसमें तो मैं बताऊंगा कि जो हमारे कमांडर्स हैं वो काफ़ी बेचारे प्रेशर में रहते हैं, क्योंकि हर बच्चा उस स्कूल में ज्वाइन करना चाहता है। तकरीबन 17,000 हमारे बच्चे हैं, 1,000 तो हमारे शिक्षक वहाँ पर हैं, और वो स्कूल जो है मेरे ख्याल से बहुत ही अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं। उसमें हमने इंजीनियर्स, करीब 25 डॉक्टर्स और 6 तो मतलब फौजी हमने कमीशन्ड ऑफिसर्स दिए हैं। तो हर जगह वो लोग फैले हुए हैं और वो एक उत्साह की और आशा की उमंग लेके आ रहा है।
सर, एक दूसरी सीमा की तरफ मैं ले जाना चाहूँगी आपको। भारत और चीन के बीच जो लाइन ऑफ एक्चुअल कंट्रोल है, कोविड के बाद से लंबा समय हो गया। हम सब सियाचिन पे की बात करते हैं, लेकिन ये कोई छोटा सियाचिन नहीं है, ये भी बहुत ही कठिन एक जगह है जहाँ पर लगातार 5वां या 6ठा विंटर अब होने जा रहा है, जहाँ पर हमारी सेना तैनात है। क्या जो भारत और चीन के बीच एक हम कूटनीतिक स्तर पर रिश्ते बेहतर होते देख रहे हैं, और क्या हम जो जैसे अभी भी प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी और चीनी राष्ट्रपति जिनपिंग के बीच एक मुलाकात हुई, उन सारी चीजों के मद्देनजर क्या वाकई जो एक्चुअल सिचुएशन है ग्राउंड पे वो चेंज कर रही है?
इसके बारे में मैं ये कहना चाहूँगा कि पिछले 1 साल से बहुत ज़्यादा बदलाव आया है। मतलब अक्टूबर 2024 से लेके आज की तारीख तक हमारे रिश्तों में काफ़ी सुधार आया है। सुधार इसलिए आया है क्योंकि जो हमारे पॉलिटिकल लीडर्स हैं उनके बीच काफ़ी बातचीत हुई, और दोनों का ये संशय रहा कि हम किसी तरह वहाँ पे जितनी नॉर्मेल्सी ले आएंगे उससे हम दोनों देशों का फ़ायदा है। आप देखिए 21 अक्टूबर पिछले साल जब हमारे ईस्टर्न लद्दाख में जो समझौता हुआ था LAC के ऊपर, उससे कितना फ़ायदा हुआ। कज़ान में इसलिए 24 तारीख को जो दोनों की मुलाकात हुई हमारे प्राइम मिनिस्टर की और प्रेसिडेंट शी जिनपिंग की, वो पिछले साल अक्टूबर में हुई। और देखिए इस बार जो हमारी सितंबर में हुई, जब ये यहाँ गए थे अपनी SCO मीटिंग के लिए गए थे, तो इसमें भी बातचीत यही हुई कि सबसे पहले हमें डायलॉग करना चाहिए, हमें बातचीत करनी चाहिए, और हमें कॉन्फ्लिक्ट रेजोल्यूशन ढूंढना है, यानी कोई हल ढूंढना है कि ये जो संघर्ष हमारा हुआ है इसका क्या हल मिल सकता है। तो जब वहाँ से पॉलिटिकल डायरेक्शन क्लियर होते हैं तो हर जगह फ़ायदा होता है। आप देखिए हमारे विदेश मंत्री तो मिलते ही रहते हैं, हमारे जो SR मीटिंग जिसको बोलते हैं, जो NSA साहब हमारे उनके विदेश मंत्री के साथ करते हैं, मांगी के साथ, उन्होंने पहले 18 दिसंबर को की, उसके बाद अभी उन्होंने 18-19 अगस्त को किया, तो उसमें कोई चीज़ें मसले सुलझ के आए। उसी प्रकार से हमारा देखिए रक्षा मंत्री जी, वो जून में गए, जब जून में गए तो उन्होंने बल्कि वहाँ के जो डिफेंस मिनिस्टर थे, रक्षा मंत्री, उनसे बोला देखिए जी अभी वक्त आ गया है कि हमें डिसाइड करना है कि बर्फ़ पिघलनी चाहिए ना पिघलनी चाहिए, एक डिसीजन लेना चाहिए। और उसके बाद जब अभी वो बैठे हुए थे ADM प्लस में 1 नवंबर को, जब वो मलेशिया में थे, तो दोनों साथ में बैठे हुए थे और दोनों ने यही एक हल निकाला कि मेरे ख्याल से जितनी ज़्यादा बॉर्डर पे बातचीत होगी उतना में हल मिलेगा।
लेकिन मुझे याद है मैं विदेश मंत्री से एक इंटरव्यू कर रही थी और मैंने कॉम्प्लीमेंट किया कि भारत की डिप्लोमेसी किस तरीके से बदली है। उन्होंने कहा कि अगर सरहद पर बैठी हमारी सेना उतनी मजबूत नहीं होती तो हमारी डिप्लोमेसी ऐसी नहीं हो सकती थी। मुझे वो प्लेटफॉर्म नहीं मिलता बात करने के लिए, और इसीलिए मैं उस डिफेंस डिप्लोमेसी की आपसे बात पूछना चाहती हूँ कि जो एक हार्ड पावर डिप्लोमेसी है वो कितनी प्रभावशाली होती है।
देखिए सबसे पहले चूंकि आपने श्री जयशंकर जी की बात की, विदेश मंत्री जी की, वो पिछले अक्टूबर में हमारे पास आए थे और उन्होंने सारे आर्मी कमांडर्स को एड्रेस किया था। जब उन्होंने संबोधन किया था तो उन्होंने हमें ये बताया था कि डिफेंस डिप्लोमेसी एक ऐसी चीज़ है जिसमें मेरे ख्याल से भारतीय सेना को बहुत कुछ करना है, अभी बहुत कुछ सीखना है, बहुत कुछ करना है, क्योंकि ये मेरे ख्याल से डिप्लोमेसी का बहुत अहम भूमिका निभाती है। तो हम बात करें तो हार्ड पावर एंड सॉफ्ट पावर, डिप्लोमेसी सॉफ्ट पावर हुई, फौज हार्ड पावर हुई, अगर दोनों को आप मिलाते तो स्मार्ट पावर बन जाता है। तो इसका मतलब ये है कि डिफेंस डिप्लोमेसी को हम स्मार्ट पावर बोलते हैं। और जैसे डेटरेंस वैल्यू तो आपको पता ही है, लेकिन हम एक डिप्लोमेसी के ढंग से देखें तो बहुत हमारे दायरे बढ़ते हैं। कैसे दायरे बढ़ते हैं? कहने का ये मतलब है कि हम सबसे पहले जब दो देशों के बीच में अगर डिप्लोमेटिक रिलेशंस हैं, उसमें मिलिट्री अगर आ जाती है, तो हमारे रक्षा मंत्री जी कहते हैं संगीत और सेना ये दो ऐसे हैं जो सारे विश्व में एक दूसरे की भाषा समझते हैं। संगीत के लिए आपको भाषा समझने की जरूरत नहीं, मिलिट्री को आपस में बातचीत करने की भाषा की जरूरत नहीं है। तो ये एक ऐसी चीज़ है कि जब हम किसी भी देश में जाते हैं, जैसे मिलिट्री उससे मिलते हैं, हम दोनों एक दूसरे से वार्तालाप कर सकते हैं, एक दूसरे को समझ सकते हैं। तो आपसी जो विश्वास होता है वो एक बढ़ने लगता है। जब आपसी विश्वास बढ़ने लगता है तो आप देखेंगे कि दोनों में क्लोज कॉपरेशन शुरू हो जाता है, चाहे वो एक्सपोर्ट इंपोर्ट का हो, या ट्रेडिंग के ऊपर हो, या टेक्निकल एक्सचेंज का हो, सब्जेक्ट मैटर एक्सपर्ट का हो, और किसी भी तरह की बातचीत हो, ट्रेनिंग का हो, या हम एक्सरसाइजेज जो करते हैं, और ज़रूरत पड़ने पे इवन यूनाइटेड नेशंस में जो हमने साथ में काम करना है उसके लिए भी हम काफ़ी आगे बढ़ सकते हैं।
तो उसको हम अगर चाइना के संदर्भ में रखते हुए देखें और वहां पर बदले हुए और बदलते हुए हालात देखें, आगे का रास्ता क्या देख रहे हैं अब यहाँ से? कैसे कंप्लीट नॉर्मलसी हो सकती है और क्या उसकी दिशा में हम बढ़ चुके हैं?
अगर आप देखें पिछले 1 साल में तकरीबन जो ग्राउंड लेवल पे इंटरेक्शन है, हमने 1100 इंटरेक्शन किए हैं, यानी हर दिन 3 इंटरेक्शंस तकरीबन हुए हैं। तो इसका मतलब ये है जो हमारी बातचीत है ग्राउंड लेवल पे, अभी पहले क्या होता था कि सिर्फ कोर कमांडर लेवल पे होती थी, अभी हमने उसको बटालियन कमांडर, कंपनी कमांडर लेवल तक ले आए, ग्राउंड कमांडर तक ले आए हैं। तो उसका क्या फ़ायदा है कि जो बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं जिसको अगर हम ऊपर लेवल पे जाएंगे तो फाइलों में फंसती जाएंगी, लेकिन नीचे लेवल पे हम चाहेंगे तो वो हमेशा सुलझ जाएगी। तो हमारी कोशिश यही है कि हम बात का बतरंग न बनने दें, जितनी चीज़ें ग्राउंड लेवल पे सुलझा सकें। लेकिन जो मेजर डिसीजंस हैं वो अभी भी जो हमारे हाई लेवल पे ही लिए जाएंगे। तो सबसे बड़ी चीज़ ये हो रही है कि जो हम लोगों का जो सोल्यूशंस है वो हम ग्राउंड पे ढूंढ रहे हैं। उससे क्या हुआ है कि दोनों साइड पे एक लचीलापन आ रहा है बातचीत करने में। दोनों साइड को चूंकि ऊपर की तरफ से भी डायरेक्शंस है कि भाई बातचीत में जितना सॉल्व कर सकते हो, जितना आप सोल्यूशन ढूंढ सकते हो, उतना ढूंढने की कोशिश करो। तो उदाहरण के तौर पे मान लीजिए उन्होंने कुछ कंस्ट्रक्शन करना है, कोई भी ऐसी कार्रवाई करनी, तो हमको पहले बताते हैं। पहले क्या होता था, वो नहीं बताते थे, हम दोनों में किसी प्रकार की बातचीत हो जाती थी, गर्मा गर्मी हो जाती। आजकल वो नहीं होता है, कुछ बनाया भी, हमने उनको बोला कि कृपया इसको हटाइए, ये उचित नहीं है, वो उसी टाइम हटा लेते हैं। तो एक कहना चाहिए जो ग्राउंड का कॉपरेशन है वो बहुत अच्छा है। अभी जैसे हम बात करें कि डिसएंगेजमेंट काफ़ी तक हो गया है। उसके बाद जब बाउंड्री लिमिटेशन और जो बाकी बातें करेंगे तो उसमें क्या होगा, हमें बहुत फ़ायदा होगा आगे आने वाले दिनों में। तो एक WMCC करके एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हम रखते हैं जिसमें जॉइंट सेक्रेटरी विदेश मंत्रालय के उसको हेड करते हैं, वर्किंग मैकेनिज्म फॉर कंसल्टेशन एंड कोऑर्डिनेशन। उसमें हमारे आर्मी के भी नुमाइंदे होते हैं। तो उन्होंने 2 ग्रुप अभी बनाए हैं, एक एक्सपर्ट ग्रुप है और एक वर्किंग ग्रुप है। तो ये दोनों जो ग्रुप है हमें आगे का रास्ता बताएंगे कि कैसे हम बाउंड्री प्रॉब्लम्स को, ये सीमा की जितनी परेशानी है उसको कैसे दूर कर सकते हैं, और जो वो मार्गदर्शन देंगे उसके हिसाब से हम आगे बढ़ते जाएंगे।
सर, अब जम्मू कश्मीर की बात हमने की, लद्दाख की बात की, अब मैं पूर्वोत्तर की तरफ जाना चाहती हूँ, क्योंकि मणिपुर के जो हालात हैं उसमें कोई बहुत पॉजिटिव सुधार नहीं दिखता है। क्या कारण आपके अनुसार? मैं पॉलिटिकल नहीं जानना चाहती हूँ आपसे, लेकिन चूंकि जब पॉलिटिक्स के केंद्र में नहीं भी थी मणिपुर की चर्चा, तब भी सेना वहां पर हैंड होल्डिंग करती हुई दिखती थी।
जी, जहाँ तक मणिपुर का सवाल है, सबसे पहले तो जब ये मई 2023 में जो हादसे हुए थे, आपको पता है, उससे मुझे भी बहुत आंतरिक दुख हुआ था, क्योंकि मैंने खुद मणिपुर में काम किया हुआ है। तो मुझे बड़ा दुख लगा कि इतना सुंदर प्रदेश, जो कि मतलब मेरे लिए तो एक स्वर्ग की तरह था, और किस हालात में है। परंतु जब हमारा फरवरी 2025 में जब से राष्ट्रपति शासन लागू हुआ, तब से क्या हुआ, थोड़ा सा आप देखेंगे कि लोगों में आपसी विश्वास और सरकार के प्रति विश्वास बढ़ने लगा। तो उससे आज की तारीख पे अगर आप देखें तो बहुत ज़्यादा बदलाव आ गए हैं। आप देखिए, शिरोय लिली जो एक उखरूल में जो मनाया गया एक फेस्टिवल, उसमें सब उसके लोग थे, सब तरह के लोग थे। उसी प्रकार से डूरंड कप 2-3 साल बाद आया। मैं खुद 31 जुलाई को वहाँ पे गया था डूरंड कप अटेंड करने, और भीड़ इतनी थी कि संभाली नहीं जा रही थी। और जो हमारे डीजीपी साहब थे वो फुटबॉल मैच कम देख रहे थे, बाहर की भीड़ को संभालने में ज़्यादा लगे थे। तो कहने का ये मतलब है कि मणिपुर के जो उमंग वाले दिन थे, जो आशावादी दिन थे, वो वापस आ रहे हैं। और उसके बाद जो हमारे सितंबर में जब हमारे प्राइम मिनिस्टर जी गए, उन्होंने भी बोला कि मणिपुर तो एक भारत का रत्न है। तो ये जो बातें हो रही हैं, इससे क्या है, वहाँ के लोगों में विश्वास वापस आ रहा है। और अगर सब ठीक रहा तो कुछ दिनों में मेरे ख्याल से राष्ट्रपति महोदया भी वहाँ विजिट करेंगे। जहाँ तक सवाल है कि वहाँ पे वॉयलेंस लेवल आज की तारीख पे क्या है, जो 2023 में जो मापदंड थे और जो आज के मापदंड है, बिल्कुल बदली हो गए। वहाँ पे 2023 में थोड़ा पुलिस भी परेशान थी, लोग भी चिंतित थे। सो मान लीजिए जैसे हम 28 तकरीबन लोगों को अरेस्ट करते थे महीने में, आज की तारीख पे वो 88 हो गए। जो आपको पता है कि वेपन्स कितने वहाँ पे लूटे गए थे, तकरीबन हम 2023-24 में 200 तकरीबन औसतन वेपन हम रिकवर करते थे पर मंथ। आज की तारीख पे 400 करने लगे हैं। जो इंसिडेंट हैं वो तो बिल्कुल मतलब 7 से 8 इंसिडेंट पर माह रह गए, जो बहुत कम हो गए हैं। तो ओवरऑल अगर देखा जाए तो बदलाव आ रहे हैं। बदलाव अभी और भी आएंगे। जब आप देखेंगे ट्रेन जो हमारी है, जब तो इम्फाल तक आएगी तो वो बदलाव धीरे धीरे और बढ़ते जाएंगे। तो मुझे लग रहा है कि आगे आने वाले दिनों में अगर वहाँ पे लोग आपस में बैठें, समुदाय के लोग आपस में बैठें और खुद एक सोल्यूशन निकालना चाहेंगे, तो मेरे ख्याल से बदलाव जल्दी आएगा।
क्या नॉर्थ ईस्ट से जिन देशों की सीमाएं लगती हैं, चाहे वो म्यांमार हो गया या फिर आपका बांग्लादेश हो गया, वहाँ की परिस्थितियाँ भी चिंताजनक हैं हमारे लिए?
जी हाँ, ये तो होता ही है कि सीमा पार अगर कुछ भी हो रहा है तो हमारे पार भी असर पड़ता है। दूसरा, पड़ोसी देश में अगर किसी प्रकार की इंस्टेबिलिटी है तो उसमें हम लोगों को उसका असर पड़ता है। और हम जिम्मेवार देश होने के कारण हमारा ये भी हक बनता है और फ़र्ज़ बनता है कि अगर उसको किसी प्रकार की मदद की ज़रूरत है तो वो भी हम दें। तो सबसे पहले हम देखते हैं म्यांमार जैसे आपको पता है कि वहाँ पे कुछ लड़ाइयाँ हुई थी, आपस में कुछ मनमुटाव हुए थे। तो बहुत शरणार्थी जो थे भारत की तरफ आए थे। तकरीबन मेरे ख्याल से 43,000 या 44,000 जो शरणार्थी अभी भी भारत की तरफ हैं, मिज़ोरम में हैं, मणिपुर में हैं, ये लोग बैठे हुए हैं। तो उनको हम संभाल रहे हैं क्योंकि हम चाहते हैं वो स्वेच्छा से वापस जाएं। जब तक वहाँ के हालात में अगर थोड़ा सा असमंजस है तब तक हम उनको वहाँ पे संभाल के रख रहे हैं। लेकिन परेशानी हमें तब आती है जब उस ज़मीन पे जब किसी का नियंत्रण नहीं है और उस ज़मीन को कोई भी आतंकवादी भारत के अगेंस्ट इस्तेमाल करे तो वो हमें मंजूर नहीं है। तो उसके लिए हम ज़रूर सख्ती से कार्रवाई करेंगे। तो ये एक चीज़ हुई। दूसरी बात ये है कि जो हमारे लोग वहाँ पे रह रहे हैं, जो हमारा ट्रेड है, क्योंकि आप देखिए हम क्या बात करते थे, हम सोचते थे लुक ईस्ट से हम एक्ट ईस्ट में आ गए। तो एक्ट ईस्ट में क्यों आए? क्योंकि हम म्यांमार से बहुत ज़्यादा अपने संबंध बढ़ाना चाहते थे। संबंध हमारे बढ़े हुए हैं, लेकिन इन्हीं रुकावटों के कारण हम उसको एक अमली जामा नहीं दे पा रहे हैं। यानी जो इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट है, जो बाकी चीज़ें, उसमें हम उसको डेवलप नहीं कर पा रहे हैं। तो हमारी कोशिश यही है कि म्यांमार के साथ मिलकर हम जितनी जल्दी इन मामलों को सुलझा पाएँ, मेरे ख्याल से दोनों देशों के लिए अच्छा होगा।
थिएटराइजेशन की तरफ बढ़ती हूँ, क्योंकि एक ऐसी चीज़ है जिसकी चर्चा बहुत लंबे समय से हुई, ज़रूरत की बात हुई। 5 साल लगभग हुए हैं, क्या उतना हम आगे बढ़ पाए हैं इसमें जितनी ज़रूरत थी? क्या इसकी आवश्यकता है? अगर ये सारी चीज़ें आप एक्सप्लेन कर पाएँ सर।
देखिए, थिएटराइजेशन जो होता है वो भौगोलिक आधार पर है और हमारी दो तरफा जो हमारी सीमाएं हैं उसके ऊपर है, जो आंतरिक हमारी चुनौतियां हैं उनसे डील करता है। फिर दूसरी चीज़ ये है कि इसके अलावा हमारी नई डोमेन्स आ गई। पहले हम बोलते थे थल, नभ और वायु, सिर्फ 3 की बात करते थे। बट आज देखिए आपके पास साइबर आ गया है, स्पेस आ गया है, इंफॉर्मेशन वॉरफेयर आ गया है, इलेक्ट्रोमैग्नेटिक स्पेक्ट्रम आ गया है, कॉग्निटिव आ गया है, और भी ऐसे बहुत सारी चीज़ें आ गई हैं। दूसरा, अभी लड़ने वाले कौन हैं? आप देखिए, अभी आपके साथ CAPF कंधे से कंधा लगाकर लड़ रही है। उसी प्रकार से देखिए, इस बार जब हमने सिविल डिफेंस और जब वो हमने तैयारी शुरू की थी, 6-7 के पास सिविल डिफेंस की, सारे NCC के बच्चे लगे हुए थे। उसी प्रकार से हमारी इतनी सारी इंटेलिजेंसीज हैं, फिर हमारे NTRO है, ISRO है, इसरो है। प्लस आप देखिए, जब लड़ाई लगती है तो सेना को तो एक जगह से दूसरी जगह मूव ही करते रहना पड़ता है। तो हमारी रेलवेज हैं, हमारी सिविल एविएशन है, हमारे रसद पहुंचाने के लिए FCCI है। तो इन सब को संभालने के लिए, एक साथ करने के लिए, और जैसे मैंने आपको बताया, अब सिंदूर में सबसे हमने बात क्या सीखी कि हमें निर्णय लेने के लिए वक्त नहीं मिलेगा। दूसरी चीज़, हमें हर स्तर पे अलग अलग जगह पे निर्णय लेने पड़ेंगे। तो इसके लिए थिएटराइजेशन मेरे ख्याल से बहुत अहम भूमिका निभाएगा।
तो अभी हम कह सकते हैं कि ये लड़ने के तरीके को कैसे बदलेगा?
हाँ, लड़ने के तरीके को सबसे पहले ये बदलेगा। पहले क्या होता था कि हमारे पास काफ़ी दिन होते थे, तो चलिए जी आज लड़ाई हुई, लड़ाई के बाद शाम को रिपोर्ट आई, उसके बाद रात को बैठे, फिर सवेरे देखा अगले दिन कैसे लड़ाई लड़नी है। कोई तीसरे दिन लड़ाई लड़ेगा, कोई चौथे दिन लड़ाएगा। अभी वो वक्त नहीं है। अभी 88 घंटे में अगर आपको पूरी लड़ाई लड़नी है तो आपने पूरी, जितनी भारत देश की ताकत है, पूरी झोंकनी है आपने। अगर आप बोले नहीं जी सिर्फ एयरफोर्स करेगी, फिर देखेंगे हम, उसके बाद श्री गणेश होगा, अभी सिर्फ नेवी करेगी, फिर देखा जाएगा, ऐसे नहीं होगा। अगर हमने किसी देश को हराना है और उसको सिखाना है कि भारत देश की कितनी ताकत है, तो हमें सारी ताकत एक साथ झोंकनी पड़ेगी। और उस समय हमें बैठ के विचार विमर्श करने का वक्त नहीं मिलेगा। उस समय हमें जो थिएटराइजेशन के, जो थिएटर के कमांडर होंगे, उनको पूरी हमें डेलीगेशन करना पड़ेगा। आपके सुपुर्द पूरी जिम्मेवारी की जाती है, सारे रिसोर्सेज आपके सुपुर्द किए जाते हैं। अभी आप कार्रवाई शुरू कीजिए।
तो जिस फ्यूचर वॉर की हम बात करते थे, मतलब द फ्यूचर इज हियर, और हम तैयार हैं उसके लिए?
देखिए, भारतीय सेना फ्यूचर को बड़े अलग ढंग से देखती है, क्योंकि भारतीय सेना जमीन से टिकी रहती है। उड़ो कितने भी, बट जमीन से अपना कनेक्शन मत छोड़ो। तो भारतीय सेना कुछ ऐसे ही है। देखिए, हम 5 जनरेशन्स की अपनी लड़ाई लड़ते हैं। 5 जनरेशन ये है जो ट्रेंच वॉरफेयर है, क्योंकि अब हमारी सीमाएं हैं तो हमने मोर्चे संभाल रखे हैं, आज भी फ्यूचर में भी संभाल के रखेंगे, उसमें कोई बदली नहीं है। उसी प्रकार से जो हमारे तोप खाने हैं या जो हमारे बख्तरबंद गाड़ियाँ, टैंक है, आर्टिगन्स हैं, वो 2nd 3rd जनरेशन वॉरफेयर वो भी होगा। फिर हाइब्रिड वॉरफेयर है। हाइब्रिड वॉरफेयर से मतलब कहने का कि जो कन्वेंशन लड़ाई और नॉन कन्वेंशन, नॉन ट्रेडिशन, वो भी लड़ाई हम लड़ रहे हैं। अभी ये नई चीज़ें आ गई आपके पास, आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस आ गई, क्वांटम आ गई, ये सारी चीज़ें। तो मेरे पास जो इतना दायरा है, मुझे जितने भी आते जा रहे हैं उतने में शामिल करते जा रहा हूँ। ये इंडियन सिविलाइजेशन की जगह, आते जाओ, सब एसिमिलेट होते जाओ, सबको मिलाता जाऊंगा। तो भारतीय सेना का काम है सबको मिलाता जाए। तो मुझे मोर्चे की लड़ाई लड़नी है, आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस, ड्रोन की लड़ाई, सबकी एक साथ लड़नी है। तो मैं इन सब की लड़ाई के लिए आज की तारीख पे तैयार हूं, और इस सब सारी जनरेशन्स में टेक्निक को मैं इन्वॉल्व करते जा रहा हूं।
पर अगर ठोस कदम मैं पूछूं कि क्या कर रहे हैं इसकी तरफ भारतीय सेना, क्या कदम उठा रही है फ्यूचर वॉर के लिए तैयार होने के लिए?
तो जैसे मैंने आपको पहले बताया था कि हमारे जो पिछले चीफ साहब थे, मनोज पांडे साहब, उन्होंने ईयर ऑफ ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन किया था। तो ईयर ऑफ ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन, रूपांतरण का साल, एक साल में तो रूपांतरण नहीं आ सकता। बदलाव लाने के लिए इसलिए कि सोशल चेंज बहुत वक्त लगता है। तो मैंने इसीलिए से दशक का निर्देश दिया कि इसको दशक का बनाया जाए। तो इसमें कुछ 5 पहलू, हमने 5 स्तंभ स्थापित किए, जिसमें सबसे पहले है रीस्ट्रक्चरिंग। रीस्ट्रक्चरिंग का ये मतलब है कि कैसे हम ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस को बदली कर सकते हैं। तो अभी हमने क्या किया, फ्यूचर वॉर को मद्देनजर रखते हुए हमने काफ़ी रीस्ट्रक्चरिंग लाई। जैसे इलेक्ट्रॉनिक वॉरफेयर के हमने कुछ बदलाव लाए हैं। आप देखिए कि हमने जैसे पहले मैंने आपको बताया कि हमें लेसन क्या मिला कि हमें इंटीग्रेटेड लड़ाई लड़नी है, यानी हमें छोटी टुकड़ियां रखनी पड़ेंगी बट वो आपस में इंटीग्रेटेड हों। तो हमने रुद्रा ब्रिगेड की। फिर हमें पता लगा कि हमें कुछ छोटी एजाइल यूनिटें चाहिए जो मॉडर्न भी हों और छोटी हो तो ज़्यादा मूवमेंट भी कर सके, तो हमने भैरव खड़ी की। फिर ड्रोन वॉरफेयर शुरू हुआ तो उसके लिए हमने शक्तिमान और दिव्यास्त्रा खड़ी की, और इन्फेंट्री बटालियन के अश्नी प्लेटून खड़ी की। तो कहने का ये मतलब है कि हमने रीस्ट्रक्चरिंग जो है बहुत तेज स्पीड से अभी हम करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। और जहाँ तक हमारा मॉडर्नाइजेशन का प्लान है, मॉडर्नाइजेशन में तो मैं ये कहना चाहूँगा कि जैसे हमारे अभी हमें पता है कि हमारे ऑपरेशनल वॉइड्स क्या हैं, लेकिन ऑपरेशनल वॉइड्स आप लंबे समय के ऑर्डर्स नहीं दे सकते। क्यों? क्योंकि टेक्नोलॉजी बदलती रहती है। तो हमें इमरजेंसी प्रोक्योरमेंट की काफ़ी फ्रीडम मिली। जब इमरजेंसी प्रोक्योरमेंट की फ्रीडम मिली तो हमने उसमें क्या किया कि जो बेस्ट टेक्नोलॉजी थी हम उसको लाए, क्योंकि जब बेस्ट टेक्नोलॉजी हमारे पास आती है तो जो हमारे जवान होते हैं, जो हमारे ऑफिसर्स होते हैं, वो इस टेक्नोलॉजी को समझते हैं। जब समझते हैं तो उसका इस्तेमाल कैसे करना है और इन चीज़ों की कितनी अहमियत है, कितनी ज़रूरत है, उसको बढ़ावा दे सकते हैं। और इसी चीज़ को मद्देनजर रखते हुए EP 2025 भी हमको दिया गया है, और हम उसमें काफ़ी ये टेक्नोलॉजी वगैरह ला रहे हैं जिसको कि हम इसको बढ़ा पाएँ। और जहाँ तक ह्यूमन रिसोर्स का सवाल है, ह्यूमन रिसोर्स को टेक्नोलॉजी और ह्यूमन रिसोर्स को हमें मिलाना पड़ेगा। उसको हम बहुत हद तक, काफ़ी हद तक हम उसमें बढ़ावा कर चुके हैं। इसीलिए 2024 और 25 को हमने ईयर ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी एब्जॉर्प्शन बताया था, और इसको हम आगे कैसे बढ़ा रहे हैं अभी, ईयर ऑफ नेटवर्किंग और डेटा सेंट्रिसिटी 26 और 27। तो ये देखेंगे, ये प्रक्रिया है। लेकिन 2028-29 को अगर हम देखेंगे तो आउटपुट की तरफ जाएगा, आउटकम की तरफ जाएगा, कि इन सब चीज़ों में AI हम अभी भी इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, लेकिन उस समय AI को हमें बिल्कुल फाइनल स्टेज पे ले जाना पड़ेगा, और हर जगह AI दिखना चाहिए। ये मेरा सोच विचार है 2028 तक।
तो बजट जो होता है, जो रक्षा बजट है, उसका प्रभावी इस्तेमाल नंबर 1, और दूसरा प्राथमिकताएं कैसे, क्योंकि जितनी हमारी ज़रूरतें, जितने हमारे दुश्मन हैं, उसके हिसाब का हमेशा ऐसा लगता है जब हम आम लोग ही सोचते हैं कि यार बजट थोड़ा कम लग रहा है उसमें, लेकिन आपको उसका तय करना है, आपकी प्राथमिकताएं और उसके प्रभावी इस्तेमाल की क्या तरीका होता है।
देखिए, जब मैंने चीफ टेक ओवर किया था तो मैंने जितने भी ओहदेदार हैं भारत के, सारे लीडर्स, सबसे मैंने बात की थी। उन्होंने बोला बजट की चिंता मत कीजिए, आप बजट की चिंता मत कीजिए, और बस मैं तो यही लेके बैठूं। और आप देखिए 2024-25 में हमें करीब मेरे ख्याल से 22,000 या कुछ बजट दिया गया था कैपिटल प्रोक्योरमेंट के लिए। हमने 28-29,000 किया, पैसे मिले, कोई परेशानी नहीं आई। अब रेवेन्यू बजट में हमें फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर जी ने 10,000 की जगह 20,000 करोड़ दिया, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। तो कहने का ये मतलब है कि देखिए, बजट आप इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं, बट क्या सही चीज़ के लिए कर रहे हैं, सही मायने के लिए कर रहे हैं? क्या जो हमारा सरकार का एक मुद्दा है आत्मनिर्भरता, क्या उसके लिए कर रहे हैं? तो इन चीज़ों को मद्देनजर रखते हुए क्या चाहिए, आपके पास सबसे बड़ी चीज़ ये होनी चाहिए, फौज के पास काबिलियत होनी चाहिए उसको एब्जॉर्ब करने के लिए। आप मार्केट को, बुद्धिजीवी को, उद्योग जगत को बता सकें कि मुझे क्या ज़रूरत है। वो ज़रूरत है क्या वो बना सकता है, या वो इंपोर्ट करके लाके उसमें सिर्फ एक नाम लिख के बदली करके दे आपको दे रहा है। तो उसके लिए भी वक्त चाहिए। तो जैसे जैसे आपको आपकी ज़रूरतें लोग समझते जाएंगे, जैसे जैसे हमारा मार्केट उसको बनाने की काबिलियत हासिल करता जाएगा, मैं यकीन मानता हूं कि बजट जो है वैसे वैसे बढ़ता जाएगा।
अब अंतर्राष्ट्रीय रूप से मैं यूनाइटेड नेशंस के बारे में, और यूनाइटेड नेशंस की, क्योंकि हमारी पीस कीपिंग फोर्सेस जो रहती हैं उसमें इंडिया का कंट्रीब्यूशन बहुत बड़ा रहता है, पर जब पूरी दुनिया में UN की ही प्रासंगिकता को लेकर सवाल उठने लगे हैं, उसमें पीस कीपिंग में की भूमिका और भारत की भूमिका उस पीस कीपिंग में कैसे देख रहे हैं आप?
देखिए, इसमें दो बातें हैं। आपने बोली UN की प्राथमिकता, बात UN की प्राथमिकता की नहीं है, बात UN के स्ट्रक्चर की है, कंपोजिशन की है। UN की प्राथमिकता तब सच्ची मानी जाएगी जब वो सही मायने पे यूनाइटेड नेशंस के जो वहाँ पे हमारे देश हैं उन सबको रिप्रेजेंट कर रहा हो। अगर भारत परमानेंट सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल में नहीं है तो मेरे ख्याल से यूनाइटेड नेशंस की प्राथमिकता पे लोग तो सवाल उठाएंगे ही। अब जब हम बात करें कि हमारा क्या है, हम यूनाइटेड नेशंस को पूरे ढंग से सपोर्ट करते हैं, स्पेशली जो भारतीय सेना है और UN पीस कीपिंग ऑपरेशन से डील करती है, हम तो उसको पूरा सपोर्ट करते हैं। और कुछ पैसों की कमी होने के कारण, कुछ बजटिंग की कमी होने के कारण भी हम किसी प्रकार से अपने किसी उसमें सपोर्ट में कटौती नहीं कर रहे हैं। आप देखिए, अभी हमने यूनाइटेड नेशंस के जो ट्रुप कंट्रीब्यूटिंग कंट्रीज़ के चीफ से पहली बार हुआ है, और इसके लिए मैं जॉन पियर लेक्वा जो हमारे अंडर सेक्रेटरी जनरल हैं पीस कीपिंग के, या हमारे एम्बेसडर हरीश साहब हैं जो परमानेंट मिशन में वहाँ भारत में के बैठे हुए हैं यूनाइटेड नेशन में, इन दोनों का ये सोच विचार था कि क्यों ना ये किया जाए, और हमने उसमें पहल दिखाई। तो हमने सोचा कि 30 देशों के हम इनको चीफ्स को बुलाएंगे, और रक्षा मंत्री जी से, विदेश मंत्री जी से इसकी परमिशन मिली। सबसे बड़ी बात यह है कि इतना ज़्यादा इसका एक कौतूहल था, इतना ज़्यादा लोगों में जोश था कि हमें 30 का भी परमिशन लेनी पड़ी 32 करने के लिए, मतलब इतने ज़्यादा इसमें लोग आना चाहे। क्योंकि मेरे ख्याल से भारत का एक इसमें, हम 1960 से इसमें रहे हैं, और हमारे सलारिया जी थे, जो मेरे सलारिया जिनको कि परमवीर चक्र भी मिला है यूनाइटेड नेशंस में, तो तब से हम इतिहास में आप देखिए कि यूनाइटेड नेशंस में हमने अहम भूमिका निभाई है। आज भी हम पहले 5 देशों में हैं, हम 5000 से ज़्यादा हमारे ट्रुप्स आज भी काम करते हैं। तो हमारा एक जो स्तर है वो बहुत ही ऊंचा है। लोग हमको एक नेचुरल लीडर या एक नेतृत्व के रूप में उभरता देखते हैं। तो हम एक जिम्मेवार उसके पार्ट हैं यूनाइटेड नेशंस के, और आगे आने वाले दिनों में भी रहेंगे।
जनवरी 2025 में इस साल को सुधारों का वर्ष रक्षा मंत्री राजनाथ सिंह की तरफ से घोषित किया गया था। क्या उपलब्धियां सर अब उस हिसाब से जब आप पलट कर देख रहे हैं पूरे साल की तरफ?
2025 जो ईयर ऑफ रिफॉर्म्स या सुधार का वर्ष जो डिक्लेयर किया गया था, मेरे लिए तो वरदान साबित हुआ। क्योंकि मैंने डिकेड ऑफ ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन, जैसे आपको बताया, रूपांतरण का दशक निर्धारित किया था। तो उससे क्या हुआ, उन्होंने 9 स्तंभ दिए, और उस 9 स्तंभ में मैंने अपने 5 स्तंभ जोड़ दिए। तो हर जगह पे, जैसे मैंने आपको रिस्ट्रक्चरिंग बताया, मॉडर्नाइजेशन बताया, उसी प्रकार से हमने जो प्रणाली है या प्रक्रिया है, जिसको हम सिस्टम, प्रोसेस, फंक्शंस है, उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा बदलाव लाने की कोशिश की। और जॉइंटनेस और इंटीग्रेशन, तो अगर हम जॉइंटनेस और इंटीग्रेशन की बात करें तो इसमें सबसे बड़ा ये था, चूँकि ये मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ डिफेंस के अंदर ही था, तो इसमें तकरीबन CDS साहब ने 200 ऐसे एरिया ऑफ फोकस देखे थे जिसमें कि हम जॉइंटनेस ला सकते हैं। तो इसमें तकरीबन 30% जो है जिसमें हम ऑलरेडी ला चुके हैं, बाकी पे बातचीत हो रही है। तो जैसे ट्रेनिंग इंस्टीट्यूट है जहाँ पे शिक्षा प्रदान की जाती है, तो तीनों सर्विस के हमने करीब 4 से 5 तो हमने वो किए हैं। लॉजिस्टिक नोड होते हैं, जैसे 3 लॉजिस्टिक नोड हमने उसमें किए हैं। कॉमन मिलिट्री स्टेशन होते हैं। उसी प्रकार से आप देखेंगे कि भारतीय सेना के पास हम बहुत सारे स्कूल्स और कॉलेजेस चलाते हैं अपने बच्चों के लिए, जो हमारे बच्चे होते हैं। तो उसमें भी हमने नेवी और एयरफोर्स के बच्चों को भी उसमें शामिल कर लिया है। तो देखा जाए जॉइंटनेस की जो प्रक्रिया है उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा बदलाव आया है, बहुत ज़्यादा तेज़ी आई है। उसी प्रकार से जॉइंट कम्युनिकेशन आर्किटेक्चर हो गया, जिसमें कि हम तीनों का जो आपस में बातचीत कर सकें। कम्युनिकेशन भी हमारे अलग अलग थे, तो वो भी साथ ले आए गए। अभी आगे बात करें तो विदेशों में, अभी पहले आप देखिए क्या होता था कि पहले जैसे ही आप बाहर से कोर्स करके आए, या यहाँ से जब बाहर कोर्स करके लोग गए, जो यहाँ के लोग थे, मतलब जो बाहर के लोग यहाँ के कोर्स करते थे, तो आपस में बातचीत नहीं होती थी, सिक्योरिटी का एक वो होता था। तो हमने एक वेबसाइट शुरू की, फ्रेंड्स फॉर लाइफ। तो इसका मतलब ये है, अगर हम वसुधैव कुटुंबकम की बात करते हैं, हम विश्वमित्र की बात करते हैं, विश्व गुरु की बात करते हैं, तो हम कट ऑफ होकर कैसे रह सकते हैं? तो अभी क्या है, हम आपस में बातचीत करते हैं, आपस में मिलते हैं। और कर्नल सेनेमोव को तो मैंने बोला आप व्हाट्सएप में बात कीजिए, क्योंकि जब बात करेंगे, बात करने से ही बात बनती है। एक दूसरे से हम बातचीत करेंगे, एक दूसरे के ज्ञान प्राप्त करेंगे, तो हम दोनों तरफ से फायदा होगा। विमेन एम्पावरमेंट, चूँकि आप बैठे तो मैं इसके बारे में जरूर बात करना चाहूँगा। विमेन एम्पावरमेंट के ऊपर हमने बहुत ज़्यादा जोर दिया है, और 88 ऑफिसर से आज की तारीख पे विमेन ऑफिसर्स मैंने 140 करीब कर दिए हैं। सैनिक स्कूलों में, राष्ट्रीय मिलिट्री स्कूल में करीब 1300 कैडेट्स हमने कर दिए हैं, फीमेल कैडेट्स कर दिए हैं। उसी प्रकार से देखा जाए जो टेरिटोरियल आर्मी में, आपने कल मेरे ख्याल से न्यूज़पेपर में देखा होगा, उसमें भी हमने बोला है कि विमेन इनटेक होना चाहिए। और एजुकेशन कोर, हमने एजुकेशन कोर अपना पूरा ट्रांसफॉर्म कर दिया, उसमें भी हम कर रहे हैं। फिर जहाँ फिजिकल ट्रेनिंग होती थी, फिजिकल ट्रेनिंग फीमेल्स के अलग टेस्ट होंगे, मेल्स के अलग टेस्ट होंगे, वो सारे मैंने कॉमन कर दिए अभी। मतलब कहने का कि आर्मी ने कॉमन कर दिए। और अभी हम कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव फिजिकल टेस्ट 26 CPT 26 हमने उसका नामांकन किया है। तो अभी हम वो भी टेस्ट वापस ले आए। हाँ, चूँकि मेडिकल अथॉरिटीज बोलती हैं, और अभी जो हमारे फीमेल मेंबर्स थी वो भी बोलती हैं कि अभी आप फिजिकल स्टैंडर्ड में थोड़ा डिफरेंस रखिए, तो अभी मेरे को मजबूरन रखने पड़ रहे हैं। क्योंकि मैं तो जो लीडर हैं, फीमेल लीडर, मैं तो काली माता का रूप देखता हूँ हमेशा कि ऐसा लीडर होना चाहिए। तो उसमें थोड़ा वक्त लगेगा मे बी, बट कोशिश यही है कि मैं उसमें बदलाव ला सकूँ। उसी प्रकार से और भी बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं, जैसे कि आप देखिए डिजिटाइजेशन, ऑटोमेशन। और आप बात करें रक्षा मंत्रालय की, जो डिफेंस प्रोक्योरमेंट मैनुअल है नया निकाला गया है। डिफेंस एक्विजिशन प्रोसीजर्स जो हैं वो बिल्कुल बनने की कगार पर है। मेरे ख्याल से 31 दिसंबर तक बन जाएगा, तो जो हमारा नेक्स्ट फाइनेंशियल ईयर होगा उसमें वो लागू हो जाएगा।
सर, इस साल एक और चीज़ की बहुत चर्चा रही, वो रहा जेन जी। जेन जी जब हम बात करते हैं तो वो हमने नेपाल में भी देखा कि वो अपनी फौज को उन्होंने सुना जब स्थितियां काबू से बाहर हो गई थी। लेकिन भारत का जो जेन जी है, हालांकि सेना में भी बहुत जल्दी वो भी पहुंच जाएंगे अगर है नहीं तो, जेन जी, जेन अल्फा, इन सब की चर्चा बहुत होती है। आप उस जेन जी को क्या संदेश देंगे, क्योंकि उनका राष्ट्र निर्माण में एक बहुत बड़ा योगदान होता है?
देखिए, मैं तो ये बोलना चाहूँगा कि ये जो युवा शब्द आपने बताया ना, ये मेरे ख्याल से मानसिक स्थिति है। ठीक है, ये मानसिक स्थिति मानता हूँ मैं, क्योंकि मेरे बाद जितने भी यहाँ पे सब बैठे हुए हैं जनरेशन एक्स, मिलेनियम और जी वाले हैं। ठीक है, जनरेशन अल्फा अभी तक नहीं आया, वो स्कूलों में पढ़ रहे हैं। तो ये सारी जो जनरेशन है, इसके लिए मैं सबसे बड़ी चीज़ ये कहना चाहूँगा कि ये युवा जनरेशन ऐसी है कि सबसे पहले ये सोशली कॉन्शियस है। इसका मतलब ये सामाजिक जो है, इनको आज की तारीख पे पता है क्या कार्रवाई करनी है, कैसी है। डिजिटली फ्लुएंट है, इसका मतलब ये है कि आज की डेट पे ये डिजिटल हैं, बहुत ही सहज हैं उस ढंग से, एंड ग्लोबली कनेक्टेड हैं, यानी विश्व स्तर पर कनेक्टेड हैं। अभी आप देखिए मैक्सिको में क्या हो रहा है, आज ही मैंने अखबार में पढ़ा। तो इस जनरेशन को अगर आप सही मार्गदर्शन दें, नेतृत्व दें और सही मौके दें, अवसर दें, तो ये क्या से क्या ना कर सकेगी। ठीक है, और इसीलिए मैं तो ये भी बोलता हूं कि अगर इसको सही मार्गदर्शन और अवसर मिले तो ये 2047 का इंतजार नहीं करेगी, ये विकसित भारत आपको 2037 में लाके दिखा देगी।
मैं आपको थोड़ा टाइम में पीछे ले जाना चाहती हूँ, उस टाइम के लिए जब आप वो युवा थे जो भारतीय सेना में आ रहे थे। कब आपने पहली बार सोचा कि मैं इंडियन आर्मी में ही जाना चाहता हूँ?
ये सवाल तो मैं एक्चुअली बचपन में जब हम कॉपी किताब भी होती थी तो उसमें मैं सोल्जर की फ़ोटो देखता था। फिर उसके बाद जब किताबें भी हम पढ़ते थे तो मुझे याद है कर्नल रंजीत की नॉवेल पढ़ता था जिसमें मेजर बलवंत हीरो होते थे, इब्ने सफ़ी की एक नॉवेल पढ़ता था जिसमें कैप्टन विनोद हीरो होते थे। तो मैं भी कुछ मन में कुछ ऐसा रहा हमेशा बचपन में कि यार आगे करना है तो यही कार्रवाई करनी है। फिर पिताजी ने देखा ये उदंड बालक है तो सैनिक स्कूल में डाल दिया। जब सैनिक स्कूल में डाला तो फिर क्या था, उसके बाद तो फिर वो ऐसे वो जैसे वो एक पाइपलाइन में डाल दिया जाता है, चलते गए। आज पीछे मुड़ के देख रहे हैं 9 साल की उम्र और आज की उम्र में लगता वही कार्रवाई करते जा रहे हैं। और मुझे तो ये भी पता लगा कि आप भी शुरू में फौज ज्वाइन करना चाहती थी, परंतु उस समय मेरे ख्याल से विमेन एंट्री थोड़ी कम थी।
सर कॉम्बैट रोल का
हाँ
चक्कर।
और शायद यहाँ पे दर्शकों को पता नहीं होगा कि आपके जो नाना जी थे, दादाजी, वो 10 पैरा के थे, 10 पैरा के ऑनररी कैप्टन थे और उन्होंने हर तरह की लड़ाई पुरानी वाली देखी थी।
जी, पर सर अब जब इतनी सारी लड़ाइयाँ चलती हैं, आप इतना स्ट्रेसफुल झेलते हैं, क्योंकि मुझे लगता है कि आपके इस अनुभव से सब समझेंगे उस बात को। 88 घंटे कॉन्सेंट्रेटेड, 88 घंटे वो उस समय जब चलिए न्यूज़ रूम में तो हम सब जितने भी हमारे मीडिया के दोस्त हैं, कोई नहीं उस समय सो रहा था, लेकिन हमें वो डिसीजन नहीं लेने थे, हमें बस उसको रिपोर्ट करना था। वो डिसीजन लेते हुए, वो मॉनिटर करते हुए दिमाग कैसे सही दिशा में रहता है? आपका क्या नुस्खा है, क्या फॉर्मूला है?
नहीं, मेरा तो सिर्फ फॉर्मूला यही कहना है कि हमेशा आपको शांत रहना चाहिए। जब आप शांत रहेंगे तो आपके पास जो भी चीज़ आएगी वो आएगी, सम्मिलित हो जाएगी उसमें, और उसके नीचे जो परत है वो परत में आपने क्या कार्रवाई करनी है आप उसके बारे में सोच विचार कर सकते हैं। तो सबसे बड़ी चीज़ ये है कि आपको सबसे सुनना चाहिए, सबसे जो सबके सुझाव हैं लेने चाहिए। और एक मैं जिम मैटिस साहब ने बोला था, ये डिफेंस सेक्रेटरी भी रहे हैं वहाँ पे अमेरिका में, कि आप निर्णय 1 मिनट या 10 मिनट में नहीं लेते हैं, आपके पीछे वर्षों का जो एक्सपीरियंस है वो काउंट करता है। तो ये जो मैंने आपको बताया 9 साल से लेके जो अभी तक मैं आया हूँ, ये सारा वर्षों का जो एक्सपीरियंस है, इस एक्सपीरियंस को मिलाता हूँ, ये जो सिचुएशन आती है और कोई पिछली सिचुएशन उसमें मिला के और निर्णय को कैसे नए ढंग से पेश करना है, लेने में बड़ी आसानी होती है।
आप डायरेक्टली अगर उस जेन जी से, उस युवा से जो आज आना चाहता है, एक, क्योंकि सर मैं एक विरोधाभास देखती हूँ, आर्मी का सीधा मतलब होता है आप लोग सोशल मीडिया तो एकदम दूर रहो। क्या नई आर्मी उस चीज़ को इंटीग्रेट करने के बारे में एक दूसरे तरीके से सोच रही है? जो जेन जी आ रहे होंगे मुझे लगता है कि सीईओज को भी बड़ी परेशानी होती होगी ये समझने में कि कितना अलाउ करो कितना नहीं करो। क्या ये होता है?
ये तो एक परेशानी रहती है, क्योंकि जब वो युवा एनडीए में आता है तो उसको जो मुझे बताया गया है कि सबसे पहले तो कैबिन में ढूंढा जाता है कहाँ पे फ़ोन छुपा रखा है। तो 3 से 6 महीने लगते हैं कैडेट को बताने के लिए कि बिना फ़ोन के भी ज़िंदगी है, ठीक है। उसी प्रकार से तो ये चलता रहता है। लेकिन क्या स्मार्टफोन आज की ज़रूरत है? मेरे ख्याल से आज की निहायत ज़रूरत है। मैं जब जवानों से भी मिलता हूँ तो यही बताता हूँ कि स्मार्टफोन निहायत ज़रूरत है, मैं उसको मना कभी नहीं करता हूँ। क्यों? क्योंकि आपको देखिए, हम लोग तो फील्ड में रहते हैं, आपको बच्चे की फ़ीस भरनी है, आप बच्चे की मैं तो अपने दोनों बच्चों की पैदाइश के टाइम भी नहीं जा पाया हूँ। तो आज का जब वो सैनिक जहाँ पर कहीं पर है, वो अगर वो चाहता है बच्चा तो किलकारी देखेगा कैसे? फ़ोटो पे ही देखेगा। उसी प्रकार से पिताजी का भी हाल चाल पूछेगा, या धर्मपत्नी की डांट भी खानी तो फ़ोन पे ही खाएगा। तो कहने का ये मतलब है कि सारी बातें स्मार्टफोन बहुत ही महत्व रखती है। आपने अगर कुछ पढ़ना भी है, आज की तारीख पे आप कितनी कितनी बड़ी पुस्तकें लेके जाएंगी, आप उसी में पढ़ेंगी। तो स्मार्टफोन एक निहायत आपका ज़रूरत बन गई है, लेकिन ये आपको पता होना चाहिए कि कब आप उसको रखना है, कब नहीं रखना है। दूसरी चीज़, सोशल मीडिया में क्या डालना है, नहीं डालना है। एक चीज़ होती है रिएक्ट, होता है रिस्पॉन्ड। रिएक्ट का ये मतलब है कि आप तुरंत ही उसका त्वरित उत्तर देना चाहते हैं। रिस्पॉन्ड ये मतलब है उसको सोचिए, गंभीरता से विश्लेषण कीजिए और उसके बाद उसका जवाब दीजिए। तो चूंकि हम नहीं चाहते हैं कि इसमें हमारे फौजी भाई पढ़ें, तो हमने इसको बोला है कि हम सिर्फ आपको ट्विटर इस्तेमाल करने देंगे देखने के लिए, आप उसमें जवाब अभी मत दीजिए। जब आप रिटायर हो जाएंगे उसके बाद जवाब दीजिए। तो देखने को आप देख सकते हैं, इसमें कोई किसी प्रकार की परेशानी नहीं है।
सर, मुझे लगता है कि आपके इस रिएक्ट और रिस्पॉन्ड के फर्क में एडवर्सरी के लिए एक बहुत बड़ा मैसेज है। हम रिएक्ट नहीं करते, रिस्पॉन्ड करते हैं, लेकिन अब जो है वो अब उस बेरंग लिफाफे का मैसेज बहुत दूर तक जाएगा। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर इस बातचीत के लिए, इस कैंडिड बातचीत के लिए, हर एक बात पर स्पष्ट अपना उत्तर देने के लिए। थैंक यू।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद श्वेता जी, बहुत अच्छा लगा आपसे बातचीत करके, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Thank you, sir, for the frank and open insights on how Indian Army's efforts and initiatives are leading the motto of reform to transform, whether it is contribution to nation building, defining the strategic deterrence with strategic autonomy, or the readiness and preparedness of the forces for the wars and conflicts of tomorrow. You also highlighted the balancing role of the Indian Army in managing internal situations with our volatile neighborhood, and also spoke on how new domains of warfare, the need of theaterization, and India's roles in the growth and prosperity of the world as a responsible power. We are honored to have with us our guest, Shri Rajiv Chandrasekhar, former Minister of State, Government of India. With that, I would request our Chief, General Upendra Dwivedi, to kindly present a token of appreciation to Ms. Shweta Singh for that excellent conversation.
थैंक यू, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपने इसका एक्सेप्ट किया।
Thank you, sir.
इसको खोलना है।
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. May I now request the dignitaries to kindly move to the foyer for the group photograph. The audience is requested to please remain seated until the dignitaries have exited the hall. I am sure we were all enthralled by that fireside chat. I now invite all of you to join us for high tea, which has been laid out in the foyer. I would request everybody to kindly be back by 11:25 when we will continue with an insightful special address by Shri Rajiv Chandrasekhar, followed by an engaging panel discussion on Atmanirbharta in defense. Thank you. I was told 20 minutes. Pardon? I repeat, I would request everybody to kindly be back in the auditorium by 11:45. Thank you. I repeat, a humble request to the audience to kindly put their mobile phones on silent mode and to please take their seats. We will resume shortly. Of course, sir. Should we run it again right now? Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Like I had said before, we have with us Sri Rajiv Chandrasekhar. And for his benefit, it would be our honor to play the curtain raiser CDD teaser once again.
In a world of shifting power and evolving threats, Bharat leads with clarity, confidence, and conviction. The Indian Armed Forces move forward, transforming through progressive reforms, building a Sashakt, Surakshit और विकसित भारत. Drawing inspiration from India's civilizational wisdom, previous editions of the Chanakya Defense Dialogue have charted pathways for strategic foresight, cooperation and resilience. Today, we are crafting a roadmap for a future-ready India. Policy frameworks for leadership, integrating AI, robotics and autonomous systems. The Indian Army is reshaping the art of modern warfare, powered by India's own satellites watching over every frontier. Reforming the defense ecosystem, fostering indigenous innovation, and fueling India's rise as a global manufacturing hub. India's youth carry the promise of tomorrow, and the Indian Army leads this charge, empowering the youths to become catalysts of strength, guardians of progress, and champions of national pride. India is ready, driving integration, fostering innovation, and accelerating modernization. For a force ready for multi-domain operations, and a nation ready for the future. As Bharat rises to meet the challenges of a new age, the third edition of the Chanakya Defense Dialogue emerges as a beacon of reform, resilience, and renewal for a self-reliant, secure, and transformative tomorrow.
Thank you. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We now come to a moment that truly embodies the spirit of transformation, innovation, and national resolve that the Chanakya Defense Dialogue seeks to champion. Today, warfare and security challenges are undergoing a profound transformation. The rapid fuse of technologies, many of which are dual use, has blurred the boundaries between military and civilian domains, between physical and digital battlefields, and between peace and conflict. In this evolving landscape where innovation determines strategic advantage, India's pursuit of Atmanirbharta has become not just a goal but a national imperative. It is therefore an honor to welcome a visionary leader who stands for this very spirit. Shri Rajiv Chandrasekhar is a fine blend of a politician, technocrat, and entrepreneur who has served as a member of parliament in the Rajya Sabha and as Minister of State in the Government of India for diverse portfolios, focusing on steering India's semiconductor vision, digital governance architecture, cyber security framework, and national skilling initiatives. Beyond his governmental roles, Sri Chandrasekhar is a true son of the armed forces. Born into the fraternity himself, he continues to be closely associated with the military, voicing matters of veterans and their families for their welfare. As a committed philanthropist, his Flags of Honor Foundation supports the families of martyred soldiers, and the Namma Bengaluru Foundation collaborates with citizens at the grassroots level to enhance the civic and administrative landscape of Bengaluru. May I now invite Sri Rajiv Chandrasekhar to deliver his special address on securing India's digital frontiers and strategic convergence of technology for national security.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just start by saying I'm deeply grateful and I extend my thanks for inviting me here to speak to such a distinguished audience and on a subject that I'm very passionate about. I have for several months now been exiled in a sense to a state called Kerala to undertake things that are very far away from tech and innovation as possible. But so in a lot of ways, getting an opportunity to speak about tech is something that I'm deeply pleased about and happy about. I've had the honor and privilege of serving in Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji's government for 3.5 years. I had portfolios assigned to me of skill development, Jal Shakti, and technology. And I got a fairly decent inside view on what the challenges are and what the Government of India aims to do about these challenges. I was previously also a slightly ringside spectator as an MP into the same challenges. And before that, I was an entrepreneur for over a decade, building wireless networks in the country, and I had some experience on how technology and security challenges intersect. So let me start with a quote, and whenever I speak about tech and security, tech and challenges, I always start with this quote. It's a quote from 2016 by a person whom I've known for about 2 decades now, and a person I deeply admire, our National Security Advisor, Mr. Ajit Doval. And he said in 2016 that the future battlefields, the victors of future battlefields, will be those who have either technology strengths or economic muscle, And if it came to having to choose between the two, it will be a nation or a group or an organization that has the technology strengths that will prevail. And that prescient forecast, that prediction of the future is absolutely on the money and on the dot. I have my little 5 cents to add to that, which is that never before in the history of mankind has technology and the economy intersected so deeply as well. So while for many, many decades and years, technology and the economy were semi-binaries, you could choose to be this or that, and if you were good in this, you would still be good enough to win. But the reality of the world that we live in today is that the economy in itself is now deeply connected to technology, and in many ways, if you are not invested in tech, you are not relevant and competitive as an economy. And I will start with that one point before I get into the other points that I want to make. If you look at India's own economy and our progress and evolution, we are now closing the gap between the third largest economy and ourselves. We are the fourth largest economy in the world. While the traditional economy over the last decade has grown at a steady pace, the digital and innovation economy has grown at 3 times that pace. We were at less than 4% of total GDP accounted and counted as digital technology innovation. And in a few years from now, a fifth of our economy, over $1 trillion of our GDP, will be directly linked to digital and tech. So the reliance of growth economies like the US, like China, and closing into the third position, India, is that bigger and bigger chunks of the economic value added and economic growth is coming from tech. So resilience of an economy in a lot of sense is deeply connected to the resilience of its tech ecosystem. So I just want to leave that thought for you to think about, and that it's no longer an academic conversation about how tech and economy are related, should work together, etc., etc. These are intertwined in ways that have never been seen in the history of mankind and the history of our world. As a telecom entrepreneur, I had some experiences in how tech helped security and law enforcement, and I'll give you 2 examples of the early 2000s and late 90s, just to make the point that tech and security have always been connected. When Advani ji's bomb blast assassination attempt happened in Coimbatore in the late 90s, I was the CEO and the chairman of a telecom operator, and we, on the fly, to help the IB, made a store and forward application that would intercept all the SMSs. And that led to the investigation and then prosecution of the criminals involved. Similarly, very soon after that, there was a notorious criminal called Veerappan. And police of many states were struggling to find him, detect him. And it took 2 engineers to sit down, do a triangulation software piece, and then isolate him, identify him, and locate him. And then, obviously, the police then stepped in. So tech and security, tech and law enforcement have always had a relationship. Everybody here knows that almost every element of civilian technology today that we consider civilian technology, the internet, semiconductors, computers, have all had their genesis in a defense application or requirement. The US defense, of course, the DARPA. So almost every piece of what we consider today civilian technology has had its origins in the defense and security establishment saying, we want tech in our overall processes and systems. So tech has had a incredibly long relationship with security, but two things have changed. One is the application of tech for many, many years was restricted to, we all know this, comms, communication, then situational awareness, fusion, sensors, and safety. So broadly, there were three areas of application that tech was deployed for. And the balance of power, because mild tech was so much more expensive, so not so easily available, the balance of power was always with those who had tech versus the bad guys. If you ask me today what has changed, the relationship between security and tech has not changed. The need hasn't changed. But what has certainly happened over the last, let us say, 5 to 7 years, and very dramatically so, is the barriers of entry for the bad guys, and I use the phrase bad guys in a very general sense. It's not just about China and Pakistan, implying that they are the bad guys, at least in my book. But the barriers of entry to these tech, and therefore the balance, has almost inalterably shifted. There was a reference made about how consumerization of tech is blurring the difference between what conventional battlefields use and what asymmetric warfare protagonists use. I would like to say to you today that it's almost underway. There's going to be no difference. The core tech behind every application today is going to be almost same. That is what enabled October 7. That is what is enabling the Houthis in the Middle East. They don't have huge budgets. They don't have DARPA. They don't have DRDO. They don't need any of that. They're essentially buying off-the-shelf components, off-the-shelf platforms, and bringing large conventional military doctrine, military forces, military systems almost on an equal bearing. And I think that is the big change, that tech has and innovation has altered the world, altered the battlefield, altered the domain of security in almost an inalterable manner, and that is only going to continue to deepen and change. I don't have very much time, so I will lay out 5 trend lines that I think we should think about and talk about as challenges. I certainly don't want to talk about any solutions. Number one is that tech intensity, the intensity of technology, is only going to increase. It is not reducing, it is not going to flatline. There is not going to be a steady state where we can say, we've reached a point where no more tech, this is what we can anticipate and this is what we should plan for and counter. Tech intensity in the economy, tech intensity in trade, and tech intensity in terms of what the bad guys use and have and use will only keep deepening and increasing. For a period of about 2 decades, tech morphed from black box proprietary technology that the Americans pioneered, the Russians had, into almost 1.5 to 2 decades of open source tech, which is anybody could build. The core tech was open source. The real-time operating systems were open source. You could customize it, build on it. And therefore, you did not need deep technological expertise to develop a platform. You could still take pieces from the open source ecosystem and build what you call your own. But that trend as well is dramatically shifting. With AI, and especially with proprietary AI models that some of the large American companies are building, consolidating, growing, and further consolidating, should worry us that we've moved from one phase of proprietary to a period of open source back to proprietary. And this is certainly a shift which is playing to the advantage of countries like China and the US, and is something for us to be deeply concerned about. The third trend line, as I said already, is that there is an absolute blurring. There is no longer a distinct line between mil tech and what we call consumer civilian tech. And the basic platform now will remain almost certainly off the shelf, available to everybody, accessible by everybody. But the core differentiator will be what that platform does at the edge, the kind of intelligence it has at the edge. And so while we talk about autonomous systems or tethered autonomous systems or untethered autonomous systems, it is not about autonomy of operation alone. It is about autonomy of decision making and autonomy of action. And that is the future, and certainly a lot of collaborative work between the civilian establishment, the private sector innovator, and the specialized deep tech DRDO type establishment is almost certainly necessary. It is almost becoming the normal that that type of a partnership is the only way to move forward. I don't have to say this, but I'm sure everybody in this room recognizes this. The fourth trend line is battlefields are, and I should have said this first, battlefields are certainly not the battlefields of the old days. Battlefields that we see in October 7, except for the Ukraine-Russia war, which is, in my opinion, a take on World War II or World War I or whatever they wanted to call it. But every other conflict today that is disrupting trade, supply chains, economies, laying waste to, like I said, trade and economies, is driven by asymmetry. It is driven by technology that is completely consumer grade, that has been weaponized and modified. And so that is something that is only again going to deepen and grow. The access to technologies, I mean, in the past when we talked about semiconductor, we talked about electronics, we talked about encryption, comms. As I said in the early part of what I said, these were accessible to the select, and that mil-tech grade kind of technologies was only available to a few. Now that has completely changed. When somebody on the flight to Delhi was giving me a earful about how the intelligence agencies had failed, and in the recent Red Fort bombing, and the government should be held to account. This is part of the perils of being a politician. You have to listen to everybody on a flight. So I waited for him to finish venting. And I said, you do not understand the challenges today's law enforcement and security and intelligence agencies deal with. In the past, it was much easier because, like I said, all of the technology advantages were with the establishment. And today, it is the reverse. And with messaging, encrypted messaging platforms, with the ability to assume identities, the open internet where they can do anything they want with including misinformation. These are not trivial challenges anymore, and the requirement of technology, therefore that's the last trend I was talking about, which is for many, many years when we talk about Indian capability, and I'll connect these 2 points that I made earlier, When we talk about technology capability, we talked about IT services. When we talk about electronic, we talk about different types of assembling platforms. But the talent and the know-how that is required for tech in the coming years is going to be deep tech and knowledge. So it's not enough to know how to code 1,000 lines of code. It is not enough that you slap together a system using components from all over. The requirements of the future security technology is going to require very deeply talented know-how, deeply talented people, the research and the ecosystem that backs that type of deeply talented people, including laboratories. I will end by making a few broad points about where we are as a country vis-a-vis other countries in the neighborhood. We are a democracy, we are proud of it. We have an open internet. We have over 1 billion Indians who use the internet. We are the largest bloc on the global internet. $1 trillion of our economy will depend on this internet, operates through this internet, whether it is Zomato, Swiggy, whatever you want to use as metaphors or proxies for it. But the internet, as we saw during the Russia-Ukraine war, can be weaponized against a nation by the US. The internet, so that is one risk, one challenge that we ought to be aware of. The second is the internet has also become a playground for deliberate state-led misinformation operations, state-led influence operations. When 900 million Indians or 1 billion Indians are on the internet, it doesn't require an enemy or an enemy state or an enemy organization too many resources to create chaos in India. With existing fault lines, it's extremely simple and extremely easy for a state or a state-backed organization to plumb misinformation on our internet. And on the other hand, countries like China, from the get-go, have walled off their internet. It's extremely difficult to access the internet. It's very regulated. And it's certainly almost impossible for you to do a similar influence operation, whether the CIA does a circus or anybody else wants to do it. It's extremely difficult to do it in China and extremely easy to do it in democracies like India. So that is the second point I wanted to make. And the third point, in terms of just distinguishing where we are and what we see the future to be in terms of challenges vis-a-vis our neighborhood. It is clear, you are all professionals, you know clearly that India's rise as an economic power, India's rise to the third largest economy of the world will not be unchallenged. There are many forces that want to trip us up. There are many forces that want to slow down that rise. And so even if it is not conflict, even if it is not conventional terrorism, even if, assume that those two are known risks and known dangers and known challenges. There is certainly a very high degree of possibility that there will be influence operations conducted simply to slow India's rise down. So how does India counter that? How does the Indian security establishment identify and counter that? How do we address the issue of weaponization of the internet? And if AI goes the way it is going, and AI becomes again the domain where one or two nations control these fundamental foundational models, what does that mean for democracies of the world? It is often said that the future of tech should be led by democracies of the world. It is often said, I remember in 2018 in a Quad meeting in Tokyo, having a warm, fuzzy meeting with the Quad members and saying, we are all democracies and we should shape the future of tech, and we all hugged each other and we said, yes, we should do that. And it turns out that it is the Americans themselves who are today talking about controlling access to AI and really putting forth a policy where they want to concentrate the future on AI in the US while China does their counterweight. So these are the growing trends: the internet, the semiconductors, electronics, optics, sensors, propulsion, AI. These are all the leading technology domains that require not only deeply talented professionals, deeply talented research ecosystem to back them, but also going to be the technologies that are going to shape the future landscape of security and law enforcement. So if you let me speak, I have a tendency to go on about these things. So I will put the brakes on this now. And I will just repeat again what I said in the beginning. I'm deeply grateful for an opportunity to speak about these subjects that I'm deeply passionate about. Thank you all. Jai Hind.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir, for providing valuable insights on the intertwined web of technology, economy, and security. You also highlighted the contribution of the digital economy and also how technology continues to change the battlefield. The 5 trend lines you identified are surely perceptive and actionable for everybody in the room. I would now request our Chief, General Upendra Dwivedi, to kindly join us on the stage and present a token of appreciation to Sri Rajiv Chandrasekhar. Thank you, sir. We now move to one of the 3 core pillars of the clarion call given by our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, the vision encapsulated in the acronym JAI, standing for Jointness, Atmanirbharta, and Innovation. Our next panel in this curtain raiser will delve into Atmanirbharta in defense, which is the key to Sashakt Bharat. Through the vision of our 3 panelists today, rooted in self-reliance and indigenous innovation, this session will examine Atmanirbharta not merely as an industrial or manufacturing objective, but as a strategic imperative and a national responsibility. The discussion will be chaired by Lieutenant General Rahul Raj Singh, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, the Deputy Chief of Army Staff, Capability Development and Sustenance. Sir, I would request you to kindly join us on the stage. Joining him on this distinguished panel, signifying the triad of defense excellence, science, industry, and innovation, are 3 eminent thought leaders. We have with us today Dr. Chandrika Kaushik, Distinguished Scientist and Director General, Product Coordination and Services Integration at the Defense Research and Development Organization. She has led cutting-edge work in electronic warfare, strategic communications, and indigenous surveillance technologies. And it is our honor to welcome her on the stage. We are also joined by Mr. Ashish Rajvanshi, CEO of Adani Defense and Aerospace, a fulcrum of transforming India's defense industry into a global powerhouse. Recipient of the 2025 CEO of the Year Award, he brings with him extensive experience in consulting and a global perspective to nation building. Finally, we have with us Professor Manan Suri, who leads the Neuromorphic Hardware Research Group at IIT Delhi, shaping and inspiring the next generation of technological innovators. Recognized as one of the world's top 35 innovators under 35 by MIT USA, he's also the founder of Siren AI Solutions that won the Raksha Mantri's Award for excellence in aerospace and defense sectors. We all look forward to a very engaging panel discussion. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. The Vice Chief of Army Staff, DG Claus, distinguished officers, and audience. It's indeed a matter of great privilege for us to address this very important issue. After a very power-packed morning session wherein we heard the Chief with his candid and eloquent views regarding a range of issues that the Indian Army is sort of addressing. It's now time to move on to a very important issue that he highlighted and which forms part of this poster right behind and placed right in the center, Atmanirbharta. Mr. Chandrasekhar also talked about it, albeit in a different manner, regarding technology and the importance of having Atmanirbharta in technology. The theme of today's session is Atmanirbharta in Defense, Key to Sashakt Bharat. And of course, it's a great honor for me to be moderating this particular session with three very eminent panelists about whom you just heard their biodata. So there can be nobody better than them to address this particular topic. The way I propose to conduct this particular session is that I'll give out some brief thoughts to set the stage, after which I would request the panelists to give out their thoughts very briefly, and then we'll get talking about a few issues. And while I talk to them, we would also invite a few views of the audience at the same time. So let me start what the Chief said and also what Mr. Chandrasekhar said. And what's right behind me is Viksit Bharat 2047. If that is the destination where we need to reach, and which has been quantified by the Niti Aayog, the pillars that they have sort of quantified are we need to be a $30 trillion economy. Our per capita income needs to rise to $18,000 per head. Right now, we are just below $3,000, and our GDP is approximately nearing $4 trillion. So it's a long distance that we have to traverse. We need to grow at 8%. And what Mr. Chandrasekhar said a few minutes ago, that when you are traversing this journey, the security threats are going to be large. They're going to be in multiple domains. And if we are to counter those threats in multiple domains, we need our own indigenous systems to do that. You cannot dream of becoming a developed nation simply by borrowed technologies or borrowed wherewithal. Our nation's resolve to become self-reliant defense power has never been stronger. India, which used to import 70 to 80% of its military wherewithal, has now become nearly self-sufficient as far as the defense equipment is concerned, and also exporting a large number of items. But I would like to look at it in a different perspective. When we look at Atmanirbharta in defense context, we often restrict ourselves to manufacturing numbers, to percentage Indianization, local content, import substitution, etc. But Atmanirbharta in defense is not an end to itself. It is a means to achieve strategic autonomy, ensuring that in times of crises, our options are not constrained by external dependencies. It's about the confidence that the weapons our armed forces employ are designed, manufactured on our soil by our own scientists, and engineers meeting the specific operational requirements and terrain conditions. It is about creating an industrial base that provides employment to lakhs of citizens, contributes to economic growth, and generates a pool of skilled, technologically enabled manpower. It's about fostering innovation across ecosystems, and most fundamentally, it's about deterrence. A nation that commands comprehensive indigenous defense capability sends an unambiguous signal to potential adversaries that we possess the capacity to defend our interest decisively and sustainably, and that our strategic choices will not be constrained by concerns about supply chain, spare parts availability, or external diplomatic pressures. For today's discussion, I would like you all to view it through this broader lens of strategic sovereignty. That is the capacity to conceive, design, produce, deploy, and sustain systems and capabilities that meet our nation's threat environment on our terms. Let me give an example of Operation Sindoor. In the operations, Indian Army, or Indian Armed Forces, I would say, accomplished its objective expeditiously and professionally. The chief made a point, we achieved our objectives in 88 hours precise. What stood out was not only the precision of strike, but the coherence of action in the entire dime T paradigm. That is the diplomatic, information, military, economic. It used to be dime, but it is dime T, technology, what Mr. Chandrasekhar spoke about a few minutes ago. This entire dime T paradigm was on the same page. The lesson, when our decision makers, armed forces, and other elements of national power, including industries, align, we gain strategic advantage. In many of these actions that took place, indigenous systems played a critical role. It proved that Atmanirbharta translates directly to strategic autonomy, the freedom to act decisively when the security situation demands without seeking external clearances. While this was job well done, resulting in a resounding victory, there are a few infirmities that we need to address. Extended timelines, integration hurdles, limited upgrade paths, and continued reliance on import for certain high-end technology. We live in a world riddled with unpredictability. And as the quote goes, in realpolitik, there are no permanent friends or foes. There are only permanent interests. The risk is clear. Reliance on external actors during a crisis can restrict not only our capability, but also choice, speed, and operational freedom. This gap marks the next frontier of Atmanirbharta, not about making more in India, but building the technological, institutional, and industrial depth to operate independently, resiliently, and on our terms. India's defense industry can no longer be content with assembling components or licensing technology. We must move from manufacture to innovation, from dependence to design sovereignty, and that shift is not simply about what we build, but how we build. I underscore how. It is on our own terms. Let me briefly touch upon research and development, private sector, startup, academia, and ecosystem integration. An innovative ecosystem thrives on speed, agility, and trust, and more so in the current scenario when the technology is growing at a very, very fast pace. The operator, the scientist, the engineer, and the entrepreneur must all be part of a single loop, learning from the field, refining prototypes, testing iteratively, and deploying rapidly. The traditional linear method of requirement, design, testing, procurement must give way to a continuous cyclic process of co-creation between the user and the innovator, an art mastered by Israeli. The Israeli DRDO, academia, industry, startup, and defense forces work in close harmony, converting ideas to reality in quick time frame and refining them post-field testing. To conclude, I have raised 3 issues which we will deliberate further during the course of this discussion. First, strategic autonomy through Atmanirbharta. Second, need of a collaborative approach among all the stakeholders. And finally, moving away from traditional buyer-seller relationship to a co-creator sort of a relationship. With this, I will now invite the panelists to give their opening remarks, after which we will get on with further deliberations. May I now request Dr. Chandrika Kaushik to share her views on the topic. Thank you.
Very good morning to everyone. It's actually become good afternoon. Very happy to be here sharing some of our thoughts. Deputy Chief mentioned about strategic sovereignty, what is required. And Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar also talked about it in terms of digital domain, IT domain. We all agree that this is required. The question is, how do we achieve it? The same skill set, Indians, when we are abroad, we are able to deliver whatever is required. So we have the resources, we have the intent, the government has a stated policy, and we are trying to make things happen to ensure that we have strategic sovereignty. There was a point with respect to integration of all the 4 contributors which are required: the users, the R&D setup, academia, and industry. So within DRDO and MOD, we have tried to integrate the academia and industry in our ecosystem, and I would take some credit for integrating the industry. The DCPP scheme, what was introduced in 2016, has helped the industry to become a part of the deliveries of the systems that are required by the armed forces. To some extent, the process that is required to make sure that what is required today, there is a clear roadmap from laying down the requirements, the D&D process to induction has got outlined, and we are seeing some successes with that. We are also trying to integrate the academia in a multifaceted way. We have 15 centers of excellence which are engaged in specific verticals with respect to what are the technology outcomes that are required not today but for the upcoming times. So seeding the technology for the future is happening. We also have multiple other mechanisms whereby which we engage with the academic institutions, be it the contracted research with the academia or the R&D boards which are there in different disciplines, armament, aeronautics, naval sciences. So academia is kind of geared up for bringing out what is required by us. So to that extent, academia is fully in tune. The DCPPs are now in tune with us to say what are the products that are required. And a whole lot of MSMEs and startups are integrated in the development of subsystems, niche technologies that are required, and this is happening at multiple levels as a part of the development contracts which are happening from the labs with respect to specific subsystems, with respect to different technology modules. Wherever capability is existing in the industry, the development is given as build to spec for the Indian industry, and we can straight away plug in. You take any typical, let's talk about Akash weapon system. We have DG-AAD sitting here. So typically we will have about 300 odd industries participating in the overall ecosystem. Subsystem, technologies, components. It is a complex system. And I would say that today DRDO is in the unique position by having multiple laboratories working across different disciplines, different domains, to be able to integrate the different technologies that are required towards making a complex system. It is a system of systems approach. So we have done our bit. We need to examine, and I would say that Chanakya Dialogues is the right forum to identify and do a root cause analysis as to where are the gaps today in the processes which is still hampering our progress towards reaching the goal of Atmanirbharta. What are the bottlenecks and how do we remove them? We have made steady progress, but maybe something more needs to be done. A couple of suggestions I would recommend: if we could have user inputs embedded in the development phase with the development teams who can kind of work in the projects right from beginning to end. Technology development needs continuity. It cannot happen in bits and pieces. While I understand and appreciate the manpower challenges which are there for the armed forces, they have to go through their own training, different kind of deputations, different kind of requirements for them to, in their overall career plan. Maybe we need to find a mechanism whereby technical people with a bent of mind to participate in the R&D need to be embedded with the development teams and continue till they reach the logical conclusion, till industry takes over. For industry to be interested in participating, industry needs to see a viable business case in any development. So the processes that we have for a development and induction, are they suitable for the Indian industries to participate? Are they able to, at the end of it, they are a money-making organization. If they can't make money, it would not be proper for them to expect only to be able to give. So are the processes viable enough for the Indian industry to participate in the D&D and the production process? So these are a couple of things that we may need to examine as a part of the wider deliberations in the Chanakya dialogues. And I think if we can find some suitable answers to this, we would have sorted part of the problem. Already we have moved from made in India to make in India. There is a whole lot of emphasis on the indigenous design, development, indigenous capability coming in. How do we ensure that it is executed in a manner that meets the aspirations of everyone? The users need equipment in today's time. While it's perfectly all right and we need to ensure that we have capability today, what do we need to do to make sure that we have this capability for tomorrow from an indigenous source? Are we doing enough to ensure that what we are buying today from any source, even if it's an imported source, at least today, tomorrow, 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line, we have enough programs launched to ensure that indigenous capability comes in. There is no debate on having sovereign capability in the D&D space. And my firm assertion to this forum today is that we have all the ingredients to get it going. We only need to tweak the recipe a little bit more. I think we have already crossed the 50% mark. Whatever is left out is more in terms of processes, and there we have to ensure that the different processes in different organizations, what we are doing within DRDO has to now become the integration of processes across 4 verticals to come up with a process which meets the aspirations of all, and also to be able to deliver the capability that is required. I think if that is what we need to spend some time and energy on, and if we can get that recipe right, I'm sure it's only a question of time where we'll be able to have technology supremacy, all indigenous systems made by Indian industry based on inputs from Indian academia. That's the way to go. That's my submission.
Thank you, ma'am. Those were real pertinent points made. You did talk about how the private industry has been incorporated along with DRDO, how academia has been incorporated. But the moot question remains, is it enough or not? And we'll discuss this a little later. But before I move on to Mr. Raju, just a brief point to you. And just before we met over tea, I was telling Dr. Kaushik that she is a PhD in the entire Atmanirbharta stuff. I mean, I really mean it. She has a lot of experience as far as going what is needed for Atmanirbharta. So if I was just to ask you that you talked about tweaking the processes, and you are at a place where you can actually give a lot of meaningful suggestions. So may I request you for 2 or 3 suggestions that you have, the process that you talked about, or we can come back to it after we go through the first round, or would you like to please do. 2 or 3 important points that you think require tweaking in our system right now. And we are, the chief mentioned about it, year of reforms. We have the DAP 2020 getting sort of amended. So from your point of view, from DRDO's point of view, what are those 2 or 3 things that you recommend?
Okay, I would recommend 3 things, and actually part of them I covered also. One is user involvement and integration with the project development teams from womb to tomb. And the teams should be empowered to take decisions in the field. That is one. Secondly, there's a lot of, I would say, industry is wanting to participate in the DCPPs in a manner that it is becoming counterproductive. People are willing to participate in the development contract at 0.1 paisa for something that would cost a few crores. That's the kind of thing. So that is, we need to find out a way where we have to overcome this penchant for negative costing of the systems. So this is something that is a problem which we need to address. I would suggest that if in all our development DCPP projects, wherever there is a clear AON and there is a clear quantities that are there, we have one DPSU and one private sector, so that while we have intrinsic capability in the DPSUs, for every vertical, one private sector industry must also emerge so that the overall capability in the industrial ecosystem grows. And this is a suggestion that we have made to the committee which is looking at the DAP. I get both pros and cons against this suggestion. And finally, in the absence of being able to take a decision, we go with the status quo of a competitive process. That is the norm today. But I think in the overall long run, if we have to have at least one lead industry, as they call industry primes in the Western world, we have to have one private sector which has to come up in each of the verticals. That is something that we should look at. Academia, I think, is already fully ingrained. We have to just bring out the problem statements better. We need to have more integration into the ecosystem. That, I think, is something that we could work on further. We need to understand the problems from an operational perspective so that what technology can actually meet your current day requirements. So I think that is one more area where some more integration would help.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. And just taking on the first point that you made with respect to having a team which is deeply ingrained along with the DRDO, that's a point well made. Unfortunately, because of the type of tenures and the type of aspirations, professional aspirations within the services, the Army has, this is a typical challenge, but we are trying to address it. And you'd be glad to know there are a large number of officers who are getting extended tenures. And I can actually, I was discussing with the DG AAD a few days ago. There are officers whom I saw as a brigadier who were involved in some of the projects and still continue. So that's nearly 8 or 9 years they have been involved. May not be in the same project, but interconnected projects. So that is an aspect that we have taken note of, and we are going to sort of get it further so that from at least till the project reaches a level of production, at least he's involved with it. That's our sort of endeavor. May I now request Mr. Ashish Rajwanshi to share his opening thoughts, please.
Can I use the dice?
Please do.
Distinguished chiefs, respected officers, defenders of India's horizon, good afternoon. There are rare moments in history when the word doesn't rarely move, it leaps. And we stand at such a threshold today. The word is shifting in ways that even the most seasoned strategist could not have fully predicted. The coming together of technology, geopolitics, and the changing demography is not just rewriting the rules of power, it's transforming the nature of security and sovereignty.
We are not here to adapt to the imaginable. We are here to prepare for the unimaginable. The strategic surprise is already reshaping tomorrow. And let me share 3 key inflection points in this roadmap. Number 1, the surprise of invisible, infinite fronts. The image of a two-front war is now an artifact of the past. The battlefield today is borderless, seamless, and often anonymous. Attackers need not cross the borders. They can infiltrate our networks, our satellites, and our minds. Imagine a cyber strike from a distant continent disabling signals in our border area. Swarms of drones launched in coordination with cyber strike, as played out recently in Ukraine, paralyze an entire grid in minutes. These are not isolated events. This is the new doctrine. Containment, once a military doctrine, must now become digital, cognitive, and a policy doctrine. The next generation deterrence will not rest solely on weapon platforms, but on integration across data, domain, and decision networks. If attacks are now diffused, unpredictable, and decentralized, can our defense remain rigid and centralized? Honorable Chief referred to decentralized decision-making and agility in the front line, and hence the whole warfare and the philosophy has to change. Number 2, the surprise of cognitive warfare. Conflict is shifting from battlefield to the minefield. Cognitive warfare aims not merely to destroy, but to deceive, distort, and disrupt the perception itself. Cognitive warfare is already upon us, waged through misinformation, micro-targeted propaganda, and the weaponization of digital networks. The fusion of man, machine, and algorithm means that decisions will increasingly be taken not just by the commanders, but by cognitive systems through data. A connected architecture of unmanned aerial systems, unmanned naval systems, unmanned ground systems, powered by real-time artificial intelligence-driven data lakes, could one day, or in fact already happening, outpace human reaction time itself. Tomorrow's soldier will fight not just with weapons, but with bandwidth and data sense. Leadership in this domain will belong to forces who see both seen and unseen, who can filter signal from noise before the enemy can act. Inflection point 3, the surprise of the demographic technology divide. Wars of the future will not be won by the strongest, but by the fastest learners. Experience and wisdom will continue to matter, but agility, adaptability, and tech fluency will determine victory. The operational environments of tomorrow, dominated by swarm drones, quantum computing, and multi-domain operations, demand neural agility more than physical endurance. The minds most attuned to this reality are those between 15 and 25 years of age, digital natives for whom coding, gaming, and simulation are second nature. Honorable Chief referred to Gen Z, who are socially conscious, globally connected, and digitally savvy. How do we look at the future armed forces is going to define how we integrate the Gen Z into the Gen X. And leadership must evolve not by age, but by adaptation. Towards a closure, strategic foresight is no longer optional. It's a weapon that decides who leads in the coming decades. Honorable Chief mentioned hard power and soft power becomes the smart power, and we need to take note of this. The world ahead will not unfold in a straight line. It will leap ahead in quantum jumps, and for those anchored in inertia, this will be unsettling. For those similar to Indian Army who see this as an opportunity, this is the new dawn of possibility, power, and preparedness. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rajwanshi. I think those were some very good points made with respect to being prepared for unimaginable. In fact, that is what is panning out. Each day there are surprises that come to the fore. You also mentioned about bandwidth and data being absolutely important, and we'll talk about it a little later, and the importance of being fast learners. How quickly can we get various technologies onto the battlefield is very, very important, and we will talk about it a little later when I come to you with the question as part of the dialogue. May I now request Professor Manan Suri for his opening thoughts. You can do it from there, please.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon to distinguished officers. Thanks to Klaus for giving me this opportunity, and to fellow panelists and all other guests in attendance. This whole subject of indigenization, Atmanirbharta in defense, I like to see it from the lens of life cycle. What is the life cycle of this issue? So I see you can break it down into 4 steps. The first step is the sensitization, the awareness, recognizing the importance or clearly describing the requirements to the developer or the innovative community. That is the first step. The second step is that co-development, as ma'am also mentioned, working along with the services, MVPs, prototyping. The third stage is induction, contracts, deploying, operationalizing. And the fourth stage is feedback, reiteration, and a very important thing, that is scaling up. Because if we are serious about the deep tech defense ecosystem, the single most important term here is sustainability. The ecosystem needs to sustain. It needs to sustain itself as a self-running, well-oiled machinery. And for that, scalability is very important. So now if we look at these 4 steps, I'll throw some light where's the good news at, and then where we need to work more. The good news is at the first 2 steps. The sensitization aspect or awareness. So in the last few years, tremendous amount of interaction, good interaction between the user community and the innovator developer community is happening. Programs like IDEX or ADBs, Indian Army cells in IITs, the TDFs. These are some fantastic initiatives, and this momentum needs to keep going. They need to be strengthened, because this is for first time for a change. The tech developer community or the civilian community gets to really understand what are the operational significance, what is the rigor with which things need to be developed. So I would say we get full points over that sensitization part. That is where the good things are happening. The second part is the prototyping or the MVP, that is the programs like IDEX, TDF, MAKE. So there also some good action is happening. Now where we really need to work upon is the third, that is the contracts, induction. The backside of this, think of it as a funnel. The funnel at the backside at the problem statement stage is quite wide, but the pipe in front of it needs to be thickened, or the diameter of the pipe in front needs to become more thicker. So now what are some pertinent things that need to be taken up in the last 2 phases? That is induction and the sustainability or the scalability of it. The first thing, obviously also pointed out before, is the HR issue, which is the continuity of specialists from the user side. We need to have those specialists in the, even all the way till up to post-contract management stages, with the same people who were at the drawing board when the requirements were first being imagined. For whatsoever reason, if there is a natural discontinuity, it goes back. So that is the HR aspect is the one thing. The other thing where is the IPR policies. Deep tech ecosystem thrives on IPR as a capital, on repeat monetization of IPR as a capital. We need to acknowledge this fact, and industry, innovators, academia, they need to be treated with more sensitive IPR policies, right? And now another important point is very crucial point. The chief mentioned about the 5th generation of resources for warfare. We talk about things like AI, cyber, quantum. AI, cyber, quantum, all these things are they're emerging technologies, and they're probabilistic. So when you start playing in the field with a probabilistic technology, unlike all means of erstwhile warfare which were more deterministic, you need to come up with a new set of tactics and a new set of assessment tools. So tactics is extremely important. We need to ask ourselves these questions. Now the thing with tactics is that they can come only from the operational community, not from the other side. So that is something which needs to be strengthened. And it was like, I've had the fortune to interact with, several training institutes, whether it is the NDA, IMA, CME, CDM, DSSC, and it's just heartening to see the amount of grassroots change that they're doing in technology, talking about technology, building drones, building AI projects. But we need to be mindful that while to understand technology, the playing around is fine, but very soon the focus from the operation side should shift on the tactics. Let the professional community build and give you at cost advantage or at high production. Don't get carried away with the building aspect of it. Rather focus completely on the tactics aspect of it. Because with probabilistic technologies, the difference between a winning warfare is not the quality of the probabilistic technology. Probability has no quality. There is no legal definition of a probability, right? It's what tactics you use to your advantage to play with the new set of weapons. You cannot have old tactics again. And the same thing gets linked with assessment tools. What assessment tools we have when we look or scout for a technology or how we treat it. If the army or the services have to look at one analogy on what we need to fix for the tech absorption, I think it's very well what they're already doing on the operational front. Let me just give you an example. When we talk about theaterization, the unification of command, naturally the answer to the operational experts come that first the SOPs or the chain of command needs to be streamlined, right? And only then you go with the theater. The same policy you have to adopt on technology absorption side. We are talking about 4 different stakeholders. We're talking about academia, startups, PSUs, and industry. So do we have a SOP unification when we look at them? If our processes, if our DApps, if our DPMs are again going to look at them with very different lenses, we are going to miss out. We are going to have the same problem. While we may have the intent that they all work together, when it comes to an operational contract or an operational tender, the desire to have that seamless options available, the same way the SOPs or the lenses with which all stakeholders are looked at, that needs to be, and somewhere that goes to, what ma'am was mentioning, the costing aspects or, so assessment instruments are very important. And again, a mindset thing, from the operational side, the services side, it's more important to focus on how to exploit rather than how to build. So, we talk about Atmanirbharta in the technology building, but there is also an angle of Atmanirbharta on how to use any technology for your use case. What is your tactic, which can be very unique to the Indian conditions. So those are some thoughts that I'd like to share.
Thank you so much, Professor. In fact, kudos to you to have spelt out these things so in a very, very precise manner. With respect to your concerns about the IPR as a capital, this particular thing is getting addressed as far as the revisions are concerned in the acquisition process. And we are trying to look at the R&D and a normal procurement through different lenses. So that's something which is going on, and due credence will be given for the IPR issue. And you mentioned that as far as the awareness is concerned, as far as our connect with the ecosystem is concerned, has improved. So the ADG, ADB will be very, very delighted with that. Of course, that step 1 and 2 has taken, but the 3rd and 4th step mentioned by you, we are working very, very hard on it. Absorption of technology, in fact, is one mandate which all of us here sitting in the led by the Vice Chief, that we are looking at very, very intimately. It is not that you get a product and thereafter you look at how to mold your technology around it. It is what we need to do, and that's the technology that we need. That is the emphasis on our work. So let me start the dialogue with you, Professor. You are an expert on AI. So what, in your views, are the most critical AI applications that India should prioritize to maintain a technological edge in defense? And how can we ensure security of data, etc., when you are inducting such AI solutions? Because you mentioned that armed forces should concentrate on utilizing rather than being involved in development. But in case you have to utilize artificial intelligence, it requires a lot of data set. all the large amount of data set which is there is all classified. So how do we sort of overcome this particular challenge? And you are an expert on this field, so let's hear your views on this.
Sure. Thank you, sir. So certainly for AI, as you also mentioned, data is the most important, aspect. So I always say that if there is one if we are serious about AI, there should be a new directorate, the Directorate of Data or the Chief Data Officer. The army should look at that. And there are some ways to preserve the confidentiality, at the same time bring the data more forward. The data can be parameterized, it can be anonymized, and data sets can be built. There is no dearth of data. In our own experience, where the innovator community also needs to take a step forward is to work on site. So in multiple projects with the armed services, we have people working on site, so that takes care of some to some extent it takes care of the data sharing issue, because the data stays with the user. But again, so even with the data, what happens is that once you start building the data sets, it's also about the heterogeneity of the data, the uniformity of the data, and then also the diversity of the data. So data very soon becomes a manpower issue again, because the perception is that if you're taking new technologies like AI, ideally you're taking them with the pitch that they're going to reduce manpower. But what is often overlooked is that for the military, AI is not off the shelf. It has to be built for the first time. So there is investment required in initial manpower stages once you get till the date you get your first models running out. So it's not going to cut down or substitute your man hours immediately, not on day one, but maybe after the first 2 phases of your project or so. So that manpower needs to be earmarked. Your question about security of data, again, the first aspect is the anonymization or parameterization of the data sets that adds to some security. And also there are various, there can be some look into what are some open source data sets which are close enough, or synthetic data sets which reduce the exposure of the data sets.
Thank you. Anybody from the audience, I think anybody wants to make a quick comment on this, whatever Professor has said, or shall we move on to the next part? Anybody? Yeah, okay. Please, Ambassador.
Thank you very much. Very enlightening discussion. I just basically 1 or 2 quick points. One is that now you find the LLMs are being developed, for which you require massive data centers. And now you have classified LLMs the Chinese are developing for the military and for the security forces. So I'm wondering what kind of an infrastructure required to reach that level of capability for us to match. Because classified LLM means that, for example, the Chinese commander would have a full profile and the response behavior, let's say, of the commander on the other side. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about. The second point is that, we have the legacy of hardware in which we still depend on other countries. But integrating the front end, the high-end technology into that AI and whatever, whether we are thinking in terms as to how we can qualitatively change our capabilities in terms of military capability. It requires both integration or new technology, thinking about that, and then integrating for tactical strategy from every point of view. Thank you.
Thank you for those insightful thoughts. Of course, it's a challenge. How do we integrate the legacy system with the forward-looking systems that we have? It's not easy to just give away whatever you had, say, developed over the past 30, 40 years and then move on to the next technology. That's not possible. So that's a challenge that we are sort of grappling with. And I would request Professor to take on the first part of it about the LLM.
Yeah, so specifically for LLMs, there are estimates which would tell you that if you want to train an LLM from scratch, just to train a single iteration of the likes of LLMs that we hear in the news, or the GPTs that we use, it's the costs, including infra, electricity, and all, goes to a single iteration training is $25 million. So that is the the size of infra that one is looking at. But then again, what I mentioned on indigenizing even the use cases, that there are the DeepSeeks of the world as well, which use much less resources. And then there are things like fine tuning, or there are things like which you go for your use case may not require, our use case may not require such a big LLM to be built. So we have to look at it from an Indian requirements kind of issue. But to your first point, it's humongous resources as it is which are required.
Yeah, please do.
I think we also need to look at building capability in the indigenous algorithms. Today we are using everything from the open stack, right? If there are any inherent biases, malwares, or it can be introduced, so that is something that we need to take care of. It is the right time to start investing in building our own indigenous capability in terms of the open AI stacks also. Because right now the dependency is not so high on these kind in the AI domain, but very soon when every system will have AI enabled solutions, and if we are not sure about the AI algos that we are making use of, then that is something building resilience, even if we are using the OpenStack solutions, that is one more area that we should need to look at and build some capability in.
Yeah. Thank you. We move on to another very important aspect, and I have a question for Mr. Rajwanshi. Technology transfer through international joint ventures is an important pillar to the Make in India mission. How can India move from mere assembly to localized full-spectrum manufacturing and IP creation in such partnerships? Can you give some examples, concrete examples, along with, say, timelines that we'll be able to achieve such a thing?
Will do. So, thank you, sir. See, the journey of Atmanirbharta, there's no rocket science. Yeah? So, why do I say this? Because there are 3 Ps, what we see in any industry, which is purpose, people, and perseverance. A couple of years back, I was having a similar conversation with our partners in Israel, that Israel is always seen as a hub of innovation. So what's so different about Israel, which other countries are not able to follow? So the simple answer, one-word answer, was survival. So it's not a function of that we just embarked on this journey because we were loving to do innovation. What we identified was we are surrounded by volatile neighbors. And this is the only way we can have 100% indigenous supply chain which can actually ensure that the Jews are protected. You fast forward 2025, Operation Sindoor, I think, has given the same purpose to the Indian industry, which is no longer about 60%, 50% indigenization, but it's about survival and sustainability. So the first P is taken care in terms of the purpose of why we need to be 100% indigenous. And so it's not driven by profit, it's driven by survival and sustainability of the country. The second part is people. So what is innovation? It's like-minded people coming together when we're talking about making India end-to-end, who have the passion to go back into the value chain and say that it's not only mechanical, but electronics, avionics, that AI backbone, which is going to work on this. And for this, we need to ensure the sector is attractive enough. If you go back to 2000 to 2015, with due respect, the kind of people who are working from the industry versus what we see now is significantly different. And how we continue to build that confidence to retain some of this new age talent, not to go and start working for the American and the British firms, but to retain in India to develop the future of India, is a joint responsibility we have to sign up to. Because without these people, without the purpose, we'll never be able to move the needle, which is the second part. The third part, which is perseverance, is very important. So there's a history of 100 years behind us, where we have spent multi-billion dollars into our Indian ecosystem, predominantly feeding the foreign OEMs. Yeah? And it's only starting 2021, with Honorable Prime Minister putting a complete ban on imports, that we've started to look into the indigenous ecosystem, but we can't give up. So what's happening is in the last 6 to 8 months, 12 months, there's a narrative coming out, is the industry prepared enough to deliver? The counter narrative is, have you given ample time, support, and communication to let the industry evolve? So perseverance is a very important element, because with due respect, 75 years we were dependent on public sector, 75 years we were dependent on foreign OEMs, and you have to give this time without giving up, that the whole ecosystem comes together and things happen. The second part, give specific examples. Adopting foreign technology should not be a taboo, because time is critical. And if we get into a mindset, everything has to be indigenous from ground zero, we can sit here for the next 30 years with very few things which are going to come out. So I'll say a mixed approach, that at least a stage zero design, either which can be bought out, the IP can be bought out, could be learned, could be reverse engineered, combined with how do we work with the likes of DRDO and start moving into a lot more greenfield R&D, is a mixed approach India has to look into. We are trying to move from global buy and jump into IDDM, forgetting the steps in between, which are important to set up a very strong foundation of manufacturing. Because, so when we are talking about capacity building and capability building, these are two different things. Even for areas around ammunition, where is the capacity? We have been so overly dependent on MIL, with due respect, and they've done a wonderful job. But there's no technological requirement. And to what Honorable Chief mentioned, we have moved from a 14 days thought process to a 4 years thought process. So at this point, even for the areas which are absolutely commodity, we have to build that capacity in the country. So there's a part around capacity building and there's a part around capability building. And capability building has to go hand in hand with the capacity building. And again, let me take the specific example. We embarked on this journey of unmanned aerial vehicles working with some of our Israeli partners. And this journey started much earlier, 2018, when drones and UAVs were not that much in fashion. Fast forward 6 years, we have done more exports than actually providing it to our Indian customer. Yeah. So what's important is, are we able to appreciate what's in the Indian ecosystem? But over a period of time, we have moved from mechanical to ground control station to ground data terminal to advanced avionics. And now, with what we are seeing in the future, as the requirements are growing, we also want to get into advanced payloads. L-end, comment, the SAR payload, all happening within the country. But it's a joint collaboration between the person who is putting the demand and the person who has to supply. The second example, sir, sorry, I'm just going to close this. We need to examine the end-to-end value chain. To your point, it should not be a screwdriver technology, because even when we went deeper into missiles and ammunition, the two areas which we found were completely missing. One was the gunpowder, propellant, and the second is the so-called seeker technology, limited to 1 or 2 labs or 1 or 2 places where the delivery time is running into 24 months, for example. So it's not only about the end product, but identifying control on critical technologies. Yeah, it could be rocket motor, it could be seeker, it could be propellant, where India has to put as much emphasis as the end product. And absolutely committed to these things, but the whole ecosystem has to come together and sign up to this.
Yeah, thank you for those insights. Of course, we need to work. All three of the important stakeholders who are sitting here need to work as a team in order to overcome these challenges that you mentioned. And by no means are we looking at everything being produced in sort of India. It is about having the critical technologies so that you don't bank upon another stakeholder in times of crisis is what we need to be looking at. Anybody a quick comment on this before we move on to... Sir, please. The mic, please, here. Quickly. Idhar, aage. Second row. Sir, maybe have Jal Dua first. I'll come to you after that, sir.
Thank you, Rahul. I'll dive deep, a little bluntly, into the question you asked of Ashish. How can we get technology? I would also like to combine it with what Chanakya actually mentioned. When I was CISC, we actually drafted and promulgated the strategic partnership model, which unfortunately failed to take off. But otherwise, you also, Ashish, mentioned something that, we don't have to keep sort of reinventing the wheel for every technology. So I think the time has come. No industry in the world actually does everything by themselves. So I think that strategic partnership model was a good way of how we could have got a private a partner with a OEM to partner in industry in India and get technology. And similarly, what Chanakya mentioned about having one of private industry partner for different verticals. That's a very good idea, and I think we need to dwell more on this. If we continue to just remain with our DAPs and DP, we need to make SPVs, special purpose vehicles, for some niche technologies, is my suggestion. And can I make a quick comment on what you what you mentioned earlier about HR issues? when you took the example of AAD directorate, when some officers were posted back, I think we in the army need to learn from Navy. Navy, that is why, is firmly in the driving seat as far as shipbuilding is concerned. They're doing pretty well because they assign officers to a project. You go out to do staff college, but you come back there again. You get promotion, get somewhere, go back somewhere. But suppose you are on Project Seabird, you continue to remain on Project Seabird till either you see through the project or you come off a certain rank. So I think there a little more permanence is required. Otherwise, we will always continue to sort of relearn the thing in our tenure-based appointments. Thank you.
Thank you for that, sir. As far as the special purpose vehicles that you mentioned about, sir, we've just moved a proposal, and hopefully for UAS and counter UAS, we should be looking at such a model going ahead so that we are able to get in technology early. Yes, sir, you had a point to make. Mike, piche pass karo. Right, sir. DG Claude first, please.
Yeah, sorry. Whom did I snatch the opportunity? Okay. Akash, you can wait. So as far as, I've got two observations, one comment and one observation. I've been going to various seminars on Atmanirbhar Bharat. That has become the flavor of not only Delhi, but all across the country. I keep hearing from the industrialists that, including Adani and what all, Baba Kalyani, that they are exporting more than giving to the country itself. I want to know from Rahul, what exactly is the reason for this? That's the question. The comment is that we are also expressing something called, lack of investment in R&D by the private players. I understand that ROI is the bottom line as far as the defense industry is concerned, but sometimes, and there have been few comments in the media also about standing up for nationalism, patriotism, etc. So besides 16 billion being put in by the government of India in artificial intelligence, which we recognize as a future of warfare also, besides civil technologies, why isn't the private, especially the big players, why aren't they pumping in a significant amount of money in the artificial intelligence R&D? And also the other emerging technologies, not only artificial intelligence was just an example. Thank you.
Yeah, Ashish, go first.
So, sir, I'm not going to talk on behalf of other industries. Let me talk from Adani's perspective.
Yeah, we'll just have comments here and thereafter we'll get back to you. Oh, right. So, okay. Excellent.
So when we started our infrastructure journey, early 90s, Mr. Adani was more driven by how the country is going to look like in 2030 rather than worrying about how 1995 looks like. The very reason we started in Mundra with the Mundra port was with the import and export increasing, we knew the capacity and the capability requirement in 2025 will be much more different. And many people deterred that this is a wrong move, 95% dominated by public sector in 97. But the foresight said we have to make a long-term investment, and until 2015, we never made a single penny of return on our ports until 2015. And fast forward, today we are holding 30% market share just on the back of efficiency, effectiveness, and digitization. The same story got repeated in the power sector when the privatization happened in 2003, that NTPC, Power Grid are doing a wonderful job. But is that enough to take care of the demand and the aspirations of the Indian population? The whole law in Indonesia, when the coal was coming, changed in 2011. Until 2018, we were sitting on billions of dollars of losses. But the important thing was to continue to provide the power to the Indian customer. Very recently, what happened in Bangladesh, we have a power plant in Chhattisgarh, which is providing power to Bangladesh through a transmission line connected to Bangladesh grid. With the change in power which is happening, we are sitting on $1 billion of receivables which are not being paid by the Bangladesh government. Did Adani move and say we're not going to provide power? Answer is no. So when it comes to nation building and taking long-term bets on any of these sectors, whether it's energy, transportation, defense, we are very clear. So you have given us an opportunity recently after this whole Make in India started in 2016-17. I can promise to you, give us 10 years, you'll not go to Lockheed Martin and Boeing in the future. So completely committed. And the investment, to what ma'am said, private sector is not driven by profits. It's a wrong statement. And we have this notion, we are 1.4 billion people, Indians, who are working towards a common vision, common mission. The very reason I came back from London and I forced Gautam Bhai, I want to work in defense, is not because we didn't have businesses. We had 18 businesses. Yeah? But some of us have to jump in, also show you that we are equally committed to this country. So you are in uniform, we are without the uniform, but the mission is the same about national sovereignty. And we are completely committed to it, sir.
Very heartening. Thank you very much for that. And with respect to the first point that was made regarding, so it's very, very heartening to know, firstly, that our defense exports are increasing. Indian Army and Indian Armed Forces are actually facilitating whatever it takes to ensure that our defense exports go up, in terms of providing the wherewithal, the ammunition, the ranges, the expert advice, etc. However, with respect to its induction into our own army, there may be a particular technology we are not looking at immediately, or we've actually crossed the threshold of that. If that happens to be the case, we look at the next step and not the lower technology that I was to say. To address the issue of discontentment that we are exporting and you're not facilitating its induction into the armed forces, we are looking at a model of spiral development, sir, wherein it would be possible to take, say, technology 1 and thereafter move on to technology 2. So this is what we are looking at in the immediate time frame. So we have time for a couple of questions. If somebody has a point to make, yes. General Shrey Mehta, anything that you would like to, and of course, General Deepak Mehra.
Thank you, sir. My first comment, respect to what DG Claus said, I think if we have something akin to a corporate social responsibility, we also have a corporate security responsibility. So if that is institutionalized, then I think I really admire what Mr. Ashish said. And the way you briefed us during NDC, the same patriotic fervor, I find it. My question, possibly, I think, and it would be directed to the entire panel, is about MSME and startups. Now, when we are talking that as a nation, we have to work towards Atmanirbharta, then I think that is a very vibrant and potent area or component of that ecosystem. But at the same time, they do not have either the pockets or the time of 10 years which you referred to. Many dreams die young. Many of them have got potential. Many of them have got the same patriotic fervor. How can we, that is the services, the academia, and the private sector, help them to grow and nurture them towards that aim?
Yeah, Professor Suri, I think you are closely working with them. Can you throw some light on it, please?
Yeah, so adding to your point, the difference between deep tech, dead tech, a live startup, dead startup, it's nothing but timing, right? So wherever the timing can be cut short in terms of processes, in terms of interaction between the user community as well as the startup MSME community, that the processes can be eased out. That would go even longer than funding. And the other aspect is sometimes we dwell too much in the fine grain. The difference between an MSME, difference between a startup, the procedures that a startup versus an MSME. So too much fine grain again increases the procedural backlogs. So my 2 cents on this is to, as the chief also mentioned, that as in the operational theater, there is not enough time to take decision. The same should be the approach for technology absorption. The new emerging, the decisiveness to whether to go ahead with it. Some of the leading deep tech labs world over, they proudly call themselves fail fast labs. So if you need to extract out of your innovators, academia, startups, you need to fail them fast. You cannot have them, trials keep going on, NCNCs keep going on. So speed is of essence here, both for the relevance of the technology as well as how soon the tech innovator goes back to the drawing board and reiterates, right? So whatever helps us speed it up will be good.
Yeah, absolutely, very, very pertinent. That you need to fail fast so as to succeed later. Very important point made by you. The second issue with respect to the processes, and I think that found a mention all the panelists mentioned about it. So hitherto, it was if you want to buy a helmet or you want to buy a tank, the process was same. You need to go through the same files, same desks. It would take near same amount of time, and to a surprise, after 3 or 4 years, that case may just go down. So in the revision, in the new revised defense acquisition process, we are trying to get in at least a couple of sort of recommendations or a couple of processes wherein for technologies that were being discussed, we are able to induct them early in a quick time frame so that they can be exploited. So there are 2 provisions that are going to be there. One's, of course, ones that are matured. You need to get them and sort of give it to all the stakeholders. And second are the technologies that we are not too sure whether they would be beneficial for the services or not. So get them in small quantity, exploit, see if your TTPs work out around them, and thereafter go in for a spiral development. So the armed forces, the MOD is looking at such a provision. With this, I think we've come to the end of today's session. Thank you very much for the patient listening. I still see more than 50% present here, so I think thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we can do with a bigger round of applause for such a stellar panel. To our chair, Lieutenant General Rahul Singh, thank you for your views and insights on India's journey of Atmanirbharta, which contributes directly to our strategic autonomy and sovereignty. On the panel, Dr. Chanakya Kaushik spoke about how the troika of military, academia, and industry has been catalyzed by the DRDO, and also about how MSMEs and startups have been integrated for manufacturing. Mr. Ashish Rajvanshi then very aptly underscored the challenges posed by the invisible fronts, cognitive warfare, and demographic technological divide. Finally, Professor Manan Suri highlighted the 4 phases of Atmanirbharta: sensitization, co-development, induction, and scaling up for sustainability. He also focused on the tactics and employment of technology by the field army vis-a-vis development. Thank you once again for a beautiful discussion. I would now request Lieutenant General Pushpinder Pal Singh, Ati Vishishta Seva Medal, Sena Medal Bar, Vice Chief of Army Staff, to kindly present a token of appreciation to our moderators and speakers from this session. First, we have with us the chair of the session, Lieutenant General Rahul Raj Singh. Next, Dr. Chanakya Kaushik. Mr. Ashish Rajvanshi. And Professor Manan Suri. I would request the panelists for a group photograph, please. Today's deliberations have brought out multiple takeaways. On the role of the Indian Army in defense diplomacy, the Chief of Army Staff aptly brought out in the fireside chat earlier today, quoting similarity between Sangeet and Sena. The way the language of Sangeet could be understood world over, armies across the world can understand each other without any language barrier. Another point would be the importance of becoming Atmanirbhar in defense production to achieve strategic autonomy, which would pave our way for becoming Viksit Bharat by 2047. As we conclude today's proceedings, we are excited and upbeat about the main event of the Chanakya Defense Dialogue 2025 on the 27th and 28th of November, which will be graced by the Honorable President of India and the Honorable Raksha Mantri. The dialogue will see a galore of speakers, masters in their respective fields, representing 9 countries across 3 continents. Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to welcoming all of you once again, along with your colleagues on both those days. On behalf of the Strategic Planning Directorate of the Indian Army and the Center for Land Warfare Studies, I extend our sincere gratitude to all dignitaries, speakers, and participants for their presence and contributions. You are now requested to proceed for lunch, which is being served at Ashoka Pavilion and the lower portico. Thank you. Jai Hind.